were masterful. Only Todd Zeil's first inning home run marred a nearly perfect performance by the Yankee left-hander. But in the eighth, Bernie Williams was, as usual, in the middle of a New York rally, knocking home the tying run, scoring the go-ahead run when Tino Martinez doubled, and Zeil's attempted trickery backfired. Two pitches later, Cecil Fielder finished Messina. On this night, pitching was again the key for the Yanks, while the Orioles had thrown away a chance to seize control of the series. The advantage again belongs to New York. Game 4 next.
NBC Sports presents the American League Championship Series. Tonight, Game 4. The New York Yankees versus the Baltimore Orioles.
A relatively pleasant night in Balmer, as the natives call it. As game time approaches, the temperature is 59 degrees as we welcome you back to Camden Yards, Game 4 of the American League Championship Series between the Orioles and the Yankees. Hello once again, everybody. Bob Costas along with Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker, and Hall of Famer Joe Morgan. There were 252 pitches thrown in last night's game, but the outcome turned on just 7 of them. Top of the 8th, Mike Messina cruising along, leading Jimmy Key and the Yankees 2-1. 2 outs, nobody on. Derek Jeter at the plate. He goes the opposite way for a double, putting the potential tying run in scoring position. Very next pitch, first one to Bernie Williams. He singles to left. Jeter scores. The game is tied. At this point, Jesse Orosco is throwing in the bullpen, but he hasn't been throwing long enough for Davey Johnson to bring him in, even though he's been effective against Martinez earlier in the series. So on the 1-1 pitch, Martinez doubles to the opposite field. Surhoff gets it back in quickly. It looks like the Yanks will be held at second and third. But when the ball slips out of the hand of Todd Zeile, Williams sprints home. The Yankees have the 3-2 lead. Johnson leaves Messina in to face Cecil Fielder, but his concentration perhaps shaken. He grooves one, and Fielder makes him pay for it. Fielder is a hitter who had not fared well either last night or in the past against Messina, but here he really tags one. 4 runs home just like that on 7 pitches. The Yankees win it 5-2. And now the question becomes, should Orosco have been in there against Martinez? He faced him twice earlier in the series. In fact, he was the first man that Orosco was asked to face in both Game 1 and Game 2. Struck him out the first time, got him to ground out the second time.
Well, I think if Davey Johnson had to do all over again, he would have brought Orosco in. But remember one thing, things happen so quickly there. There were 2 outs before Messina got in any trouble. And actually, I think the 2 pitches that hurt him the most were the 2 that he threw to Jeter and also to Bernie Williams. This is a fastball away. He had been getting Jeter out the entire evening, pitching him fastballs in. Not a bad pitch. And also the same thing with Bernie Williams. This is a breaking ball away. He had been pitching him in all evening and handling him okay. But remember, these are 2 hitters that like the ball out over the plate. Both pitches were out over the plate. Not bad pitches, but they were in these hitters' zones.
And the trouble started so quickly, Williams singling on the first pitch after Jeter doubled, that even when the pitching coach, Pat Dobson, went to the mound to try and buy some time, Orosco wasn't quite ready. Well, no matter what happens, if it's good for the Yankees, smack dab in the middle of it is Bernie Williams.
Boy, it has been Bernie Williams, Bob. You know, this is a pretty good play by B.J. Surhoff. The ball hit by Tino Martinez was laced into the left field quarter. He does a good job to cut it off. If he doesn't cut the ball off, Williams is going to score anyway. As you saw the head first slide into third, and then when Zeile bluffed that throw to second and threw the ball away, Williams pops up, scores, run number 3. That turned out to be the winner. It preceded the big home run, though, by Cecil Fielder.
And, man, he's done it all in this postseason with the gloves, and as you just saw with his legs on the base paths, he's hit 4 playoff home runs, including the game winner in this series in the bottom of the 11th at Yankee Stadium off Randy Myers. And a short while ago, our Jim Gray talked with Bernie Williams.
All right, thank you very much, Bob. I'm now joined by Bernie Williams. Bernie, last night when you were on third base, were you even thinking about going home when Todd Zeile attempted that fake throw?
No, not really. Not when he had the ball. When he caught the ball, I didn't think. I mean, it was going to be just a routine play. But when I saw the ball on the ground and I saw Cal very far from the ball. I figured by the time that he picks the ball up and turns and throws, he's got to make a perfect throw to throw me out. So I just took the chance.
Bernie, you have got to be the most overlooked superstar in the American League. Do you feel as though that's the case and now this is your showcase?
I don't think so. I think I've been trying to be as consistent as I can, and I just try to go out there and play hard every day and just give it my best. I know if you do certain things, especially here in the postseason, you're going to get noticed, but I'm not looking at that right now. I'm just having a lot of fun right now.
It's nice to see in this day and age. A very humble young man. Back upstairs to you, Bob.
Yeah, Jim, he is a soft-spoken guy. In addition to his baseball exploits, he's a classical guitarist. He says his two dreams were A, to make the major leagues. That's been realized, obviously. And B, to someday perform at Carnegie Hall. That hasn't happened yet, but his performance has certainly reached a crescendo in the playoffs. As you see, he's hit safely in all 7 Yankee postseason games with the 4 homers and the 9 RBIs. Trying to mute his performance and the performance of his teammates in Game 4, Davey Johnson has to turn to a rookie, Rocky Coppinger.
Well, Bob, when the Orioles split the 2 games in New York and were coming to Baltimore, they had control of this series. But after the loss last night, this becomes the most pivotal game of the entire series, and they have to start a rookie. Rocky Coppinger got off to a great start. He won his first 5 decisions, but then he started to struggle. And you do not want to have to start a rookie again in the most pivotal game on a 7-game series.
And we have to wonder about how sharp he'll be, not only because of the possibility of nerves, but he hasn't pitched in 16 days. They didn't use him in the division series against Cleveland. His opponent tonight, the veteran left-hander Kenny Rogers. It seems strange to say of a guy who was on the All-Star team a year ago, who in the past threw a perfect game for the Texas Rangers, but in a sense, he's trying to find himself.
Yeah, he really has, Bob. He has been having problems. As a matter of fact, in his only other postseason appearance, Texas took him apart in 2+ innings. He has not pitched well this month, the month of September, and into the postseason, as I said. The Orioles are going to see much the same from Rogers as they did from Jimmy Key in last night's game. He throws that sinker running down and away from a right-handed batter. He's got a breaking ball, a cutter that he'll throw into a right-hander, too, and that breaking ball away from a left-handed batter. Pretty good change of pace. If you try to pull this guy, he'll drive you nuts as a right-handed batter because, as I said, he does try to pitch you down low and away.
Okay, so Kenny Rogers, Rocky Coppinger. Game 4 coming up. We'll show you the lineups, and we'll have the first pitch from Baltimore when we come back after this. I don't know how much of a home field advantage we're talking about when the Orioles host the Yankees. The Yankees won all 6 here during the regular season and made it 7 in a row with their come-from-behind victory last night. Trying to reverse that trend is Rocky Coppinger against this lineup. Rain sits down, Hayes to the bench, Boggs and O'Neill back in, and Strawberry to left field. Coppinger for the year 10-6, the ERA over 5. That's after winning his first 5 decisions. He was at Rochester, the Orioles AAA farm, until June. Included among those 5 victories right out of the chute, a win against his boyhood idol, Roger Clemens of the Red Sox. Let's check the defense for the Orioles.
Well, let's take a look at the defense. You can see the Orioles have made 7 errors, and 3 of them have been committed by Todd Zeile at third base. They also have made a change in left field. Mike Devereaux starts in left field in place of B.J. Surhoff.
The reason being that Devereaux has a .351 career mark against Kenny Rogers. And Surhoff, of course, is a left-handed batter, so they go with the right-handed swinging Devereaux against the southpaw Rogers. Coppinger's first pitch on perhaps the biggest night of his life, down and in for a ball, to Derek Jeter, who has hit safely in all 7 postseason games for New York.
Coppinger features a very good fastball and a slider.
And that ball is hit hard between Palmeiro and the bag for extra bases. An opposite field double, just as he delivered in the 8th inning last night to start the New York rally.
Jeter has hit just about every pitch that's been a fastball to the right side in this entire series. This again is a fastball out over the plate, down and away actually, and he lines it inside the bag, and he has another double. But all of his hits have been to right field in this entire series. But you can't just stack him over there. As you see, they had the hole covered, but they did not have the line covered. Good hitting there by Jeter.
And now Wade Boggs, hitless in his last 17 at-bats after opening the playoffs with a double against Texas.
Here's that opening double by Jeter. Joe, you talk about somebody keeping their head down and right on the ball. I mean, if you're talking about perfect hitting style and posture, this guy is really something.
Boggs fouls it out of play. A ball and a strike.
You talked about it yesterday, Joe. You talked about it throughout the series about pitching this guy inside. I'll tell you what, I would make a concerted effort to jam this guy on every pitch. I mean, every time they go down and away. That was a heck of a pitch. Down low and away, and he doubles to right.
Well, they've had success inside with him, but not out over the plate.
The 1-1 pitch is a fastball popped back, and it's out of play. Rocky Coppinger is just 22 years old. He's from El Paso, Texas. A 19th round selection by the Orioles in 1993, so he was not the most highly regarded prospect, but he shot up through the minor leagues rather quickly to make it to the majors at midseason this year.
This is a good test to see if Wade Boggs' back is any better. He should have been trying to pull those two pitches, and he has not been able to get around on either two of the fastballs he swung at.
Hits this one in the air to center. Jeter goes back to tag. It's carrying pretty well. Anderson makes the catch, and Jeter will advance to third with 1 out.
Well, he was not able to pull the ball, but he got the job done by hitting the ball deep enough in the left center field for Jeter to move over. But your first priority as a left-handed hitter is to pull the ball, and normally a left-handed hitter will just try to make sure he gets that barrel of the bat out front so he hits a ground ball to second base or to the right side. But we'll take a look at Boggs. You see he keeps his head down and still pretty well too, but not enough bat speed to pull it. And you see Jeter just goes back. I mean, he's a smart base runner. Goes back, tags up, and moves over to third easily.
And here's the classical guitarist, Bernie Williams, who's hit Texas and Baltimore pitching to the tune of 480 overall in the postseason, 500 against the Orioles in the first 3 games. Coppinger starts him with a strike. The infield back conceding the run should he hit it on the ground. He hits it in the air to deep right. This ball is gone. In Carnegie Hall, but it's as grand a stage short of the World Series as baseball offers, and he is delivering a virtuoso performance.
Well, it's a similar pitch to what he got from Messina last night. It's a breaking ball out over the plate, and he's able to turn on it. I mean, if you want to be successful against him from the left side, you have to stay on top of him with fastball. Now here's the breaking ball, and you'll see it right in the middle of the plate, looks like, and Bernie gets the barrel out in front and just drives it. And he's very strong, and he hit 29 home runs during the season.
And now 5 in the playoffs.
If that's Coppinger's slider tonight here in the opening inning, Joe, the Orioles are in trouble. Flat, hung right up there. The other thing tonight, Bob, in difference to last night, the ball is carrying much better tonight. Really is. During batting practice here, they were hitting them into the upper deck and left and out of here and right. Here's that ball hit by Williams. Watch this. It's to the back row of an extra set of bleachers in right.
This one will make the seats off Tino Martinez's bat 2-1. 5 homers in 7 games plus 1 at-bat in this postseason. Now, when you look at these records, You have to take into account that the postseason has changed over the years. Used to be just the World Series. Until last year, it was the LCS plus the World Series. Now you've got 3 rounds, at least potentially, for each hitter. Coppinger allowed 25 home runs in just 125 innings for the Orioles this year. So he's thrown up a lot of them that haven't come back.
Well, you expect a rookie who throws hard to give up a few home runs simply because when he gets behind in the count, he can't spot the fastball. He has to try to throw a strike with it rather than try to hit the inside corner or the outside corner. And so that's the problem that you face.
Now is 2-2 to Tino Martinez. Is hit sharply to second, and Alomar throws him out. Well, last night, it was the Orioles who got a 2-run homer in the first to take a quick 2-0 lead. Zeal hit it. This time, Williams does it for New York.
Well, not to get beyond ourselves here with Coppinger, because this kid has got good stuff. The Orioles really like him. And a 2-run homer, not that big of a deal here in the opening inning. It does put the Yankees up, but this kid throws the ball good. He really does. And how do you know? A little nervousness here tonight. Big game, as Joe alluded to earlier, and probably the biggest game of his career. And they tagged him early.
And that last graphic showed you that that's pretty much been the trend for him. He's had a lot of trouble out of the gate. A double and a homer. Davey Johnson's O's down 2-0. 0-2 to Fielder. Had there not been a rainout on Tuesday night, the scheduled game 1, which eliminated Thursday's scheduled off day, Coppinger would not have gotten this start. They would have come back with Scott Erickson on 3 days rest for this game 4. As it is now, Erickson goes against Andy Pettit, the game 1 starters, tomorrow afternoon in game 5 here. He strikes Fielder out to end the New York first. But the Yankees jump on him for 2. Back to Camden Yards right after this. Tonight's American League Championship Series is brought to you by Nissan. We remind you that life is a journey, so enjoy the ride. By Dr. Pepper and your local Dr. Pepper bottler. Dr. Pepper is just what the doctor ordered. By True Value, official hardware store of Major League Baseball, and yards everywhere. And by UPS, moving at the speed of business. Kenny Rogers has been staked to an early 2-0 lead. He'll face Brady Anderson to start it for Baltimore. Rogers is 31 years old, had his best year in 1995 for Texas when he went 17-7. Signed a big free agent contract with George Steinbrenner's Yankees. Went 12-8 this year. Ball up and into Anderson with an ERA of 4.68. At times they took him out of the rotation, used him out of the bullpen. Joe Torre and Mel Stottlemyre lost confidence in him for a while. He worked only 2 innings in Game 4 of the division series at Texas, his old home park. That's a check swing foul. Gave up 2 runs, and Joe Torre had seen enough, went right to the bullpen. The Yankees came back and won the game, but he's fared very well against Baltimore this year. 2-0 against the Birds. His last time out against them, September 19th at Yankee Stadium, pitched 5 2/3 shutout innings.
Bob, you mentioned that the Yankees lost confidence in him. Well, I think he had to lose confidence in himself because of the way he was treated in spring training. He won 17 ball games last year for the Texas Rangers and lost 7. Came to spring training and he had to win a job, which is very difficult for a veteran to think about.
You know, the other thing to go along with that statement, Joe, is the fact that it shows what kind of a manager Joe Torre is. I mean, Joe Torre knew what he wanted to do and didn't feel Rogers was ready to pitch early this spring, and to sit a guy down who they pay him this kind of money takes a little extra from a manager.
Full count now to Brady Anderson.
They had words. I mean, Torre and Kenny Rogers had words. Rogers couldn't believe that he was going to be sent to the bullpen after signing that contract. But whatever Joe Torre did and whatever he told Kenny Rogers, as far as working further into the season, it's worked for him, and he's done well.
3-2 pitch. Walked him. And now here's the Oriole lineup. With Anderson at first, he's followed by Todd Zeile, who has homered in each of the last 2 games. Alomar, Palmeiro, Bonilla, and Ripken in their usual spots, but Incaviglia is the DH. Eddie Murray sitting this one out. Devereaux in left in place of Surhoff. As we mentioned, Devereaux has hit Rogers well, and Hoyles catches and bats 9th. Called strike. The plate umpire is Dan Morrison. Rocky Rowe at first. Rich Garcia at second. Larry Barnett, the crew chief, at third. Dale Scott on the left field line. Mike Riley, who had the plate last night, calls him down the right field line.
That is the first ball that he has been able to get down in the strike zone.
Anderson stole 21 this year. Back in '92, he swiped 53. So he's a threat.
Yeah, but he became a slugger this year. 50 home runs. It's hard to steal 50 bases if you had 50 home runs.
How good is Rogers' move?
Well, it depends on the way you look at it. Good base stealers will not have a lot of problems with him, although he does have a pretty good move, and he did pick off a few runners, but he will bother the average base runner. But a good base stealer would be able to read him. Pretty good move right there.
Those guys that have the decent move, Joe, and give you that little move every once in a while that doesn't mean a thing, and all of a sudden when they really want you, pow, here it is. And that's the one that'll get you back real quickly.
Here's the 0-1, and it's hit by the diving Martinez. Anderson rounds second. They'll have runners at the corners with nobody out. Now, because Martinez was holding Anderson, as he had to, he had no chance to get that ball, or very little chance, because it got on him so quickly. If he's playing back at the normal first base position, it's probably playable.
Well, that's exactly what Rogers wants to do, is get ground balls. He finally started getting the ball down to Todd Zeile. Zeile hits the ground ball just wide at first. Martinez not able to make the play. Watch Martinez, he jumps off. Actually, he didn't get off quite as far as I thought he was, but still good hitting by Zeile, and he finds a hole.
You know, when we talked at the top about Rogers, Bob, and not trying to pull this guy, if you can try to go the other way with him, you're going to have some success. That pitch was down and away, a breaking ball down and away, and Zeile went right with it.
Now it's strike one to Alomar, as the Orioles try to strike back in the bottom half of the first. Bernie Williams took rookie Rocky Coppinger deep with a 2-run shot in the Yankee half. There's Coppinger, who slammed his glove to the dugout wall when he came back after his first half inning. Swing and a miss, 0-2.
Here's that last fastball from Kenny Rogers. Little cutter up around the letters on Alomar, out of the strike zone, but he went after it.
And time is called. The umpire's seeing something that's distracting to some of the players. There it is, the light atop the camera, and that cameraman doesn't realize yet that he's the source of the delay. Our producer, David Neal, urgently requesting that we point out this is not one of our cameras. We wouldn't dream of doing such a thing. There we go. He was about the last guy in the park to realize what was going on. Now Rogers back to work. Ahead of Alomar 0-2. Palmeiro on deck. Close play at first with Zeile diving back.
There's that good move again by Rogers. And he almost nailed Todd Zeile. Watch this. Close play at first. Martinez the grab and the tag, and they just missed him. This is a good move by Rogers, and he almost nailed it.
The 0-2 pitch makes him skip away 1-2.
Well, we saw Graham Lloyd come in and throw 2 fastballs by Alomar up and in, and then throw him a breaking ball away. You see they're staying in tight with him in this at bat.
Hit hard but foul. Alomar hit .328 for the year with 22 home runs and 94 RBIs.
Well, it's another fastball on the inside part of the plate, maybe off a little bit. Alomar gets out in front of it and pulls it foul.
The Orioles trying to cut into the Yankee lead here in the first. Fastball high and away, 2-2.
Joe Torre hollering out at Kenny Rogers. Stottlemyre there. This is the thing that has been the bugaboo and a problem for Rogers all year long, pitching from behind. And we've seen him enough. When he pitches from behind and he doesn't have the overpowering stuff, that guys sit on that pitch, sit on a fastball, or even sit on a breaking ball against him and really hurt him. I mean, he walks Anderson, a left-handed batter, to lead this game off.
Here's the 2-2. Full count. Don Zimmer, Torre, and Mel Stottlemyre. Struck him out.
Excellent pitch there by Rogers. They had pitched him inside to get him looking inside, and then they go away with the changeup. You can see the fingers up there. He took a little bit off, and that ball moved down and away from Alomar. This is one of Rogers' better pitches. Fastball, curveball, and a straight change, except it's not straight. This one tails away. So it starts over the corner and moves off, and no chance for Alomar to put it in play.
And as a hitter, you might as well make your mind up against this guy, Joe, that you're going to see it. When he's behind in the count, he's going to throw you the off-speed stuff. And again, against the right-handers, try and keep it down low and away on you.
He actually set Alomar up well that at bat because he came inside with about 4 pitches and then went down and away to finish him off.
So now it's up to Palmeiro, who's hit 3 postseason homers, 2 of them in this series. Fastball high. Eddie Murray not in the lineup tonight, seated next to Alomar. And he rolls it foul on the breaking ball, 1-1.
One guy I was surprised at that he's back in the lineup tonight is O'Neill in right. He's been walking around every time between a pitch. He'll walk around, do some squats, and I talked to him before the game tonight. It's amazing. He can do squats, he can stretch and everything else, but when he tries to run, that's when he really has problems with that left hamstring.
They've got Strawberry in left, a hobbling O'Neill in right. 2 balls and a strike, and that puts more pressure on Bernie Williams in center to cover some ground to either side.
Well, between each pitch, he walks around out there to try and keep it loose. It's cooling off as the game moves along, and the longer he stands out there, the more it may tighten up on him, and something hit out there may give him trouble if he has to make a quick break on it.
Strawberry, by the way, can still cover ground, but he is not an excellent defensive outfielder, and he's played more right than left in recent years.
That's why I was surprised tonight when I got here and I talked to O'Neill on the field. He's laying on the ground doing all the stretching stuff. I said, "Are you playing tonight?" He said, "Yeah." Should I talk him into it?
2-1 pitch hit hard but foul. Well, what was it your old teammate Warren Spahn used to say? Hitting is timing.
Is Euchre catching? I'm not pitching.
Yeah, that's what he used to say, right? Where's Uke? If he's in the lineup, I'm coming up lame. But the other thing he used to say was, hitting is timing and pitching is about upsetting timing. Rogers mixing speeds here on Palmeiro. Took something off that last one. Here comes on 2-2. And another full count. Didn't mind when that guy, Torrey, was catching.
No, he sure didn't. You're right.
You get a good receiver and a terrific hitter. In fact, he was behind the plate when Spahny won his 300th.
Well, he has 20 pitches already this inning, but Joe Torre just wants him to get him to the 7th. That's really all he wants.
This should get a run home and maybe more. Bernie Williams going back, way back to the fence for the catch. Tagging and scoring is Brady Anderson.
Well, no doubt the ball is carrying a lot better tonight than it was last night. Rogers makes a good pitch, a fastball out over the plate. Now watch Palmeiro. He goes the other way with it. See, that pitch is out over the plate. He thinks he may have gotten it because earlier in the season, and on normal hot days, that ball is out of the ballpark, he thinks. And then he sees right there, no, it didn't get out of here. You see Bernie Williams does a great job of getting under the ball, making sure he gets back there in time.
Zeal remained at first. Sacrifice fly for Palmeiro, who had hoped for more. 2-1 Yankees now. And Bonilla, hitless in this series. 3 for 26 overall in the postseason. 2 of the 3 hits, though, are homers, including a grand slam against the Indians.
Bob, and looking at Rogers here in the opening inning, and again, Palmeiro almost took him out of here. This is going to be a tough situation for Rogers and the Yankees. I mean, if he can't start pitching from in front of these guys, he's really going to get stung. And it bears repeating, the ball is really carrying a lot better tonight.
Well, just contrast that, called strike, 1-1, with the ball Fielder hit last night. Fielder, one of the strongest men in baseball, crushed a ball, and it made it only 3 or 4 rows into the seats. Here, Palmeiro, with a pitch down and away, goes to the opposite field and nearly gets it out on a ball hit not nearly as well. Still muttering to himself. 2-1 to Bonilla.
Looks like a little different Oriole team tonight than the one we saw even the second game in New York after the first game loss and last night. I think they feel the pressure and they understand this is the most pivotal game of a 7-game series.
A little squibber to Martinez. Plays a short hop. Goes back to the bag to finish Bonilla, who's still looking for his first hit in this series. Sac fly by Palmeiro cuts the lead in half.
As mentioned earlier, this was Coppinger after the first inning giving up the 2-run homer. He goes in and he slams his glove. Now contrast that to Jimmy Key last night, he gave up a 2-run homer in the first. He just shrugged his shoulders and said, I'll have to make better pitches. Now, the question is, how will Coppinger channel this anger that he has? Because a young pitcher will get angry and sometimes overthrow or try to do too much.
Well, Kenny Rogers had a tough first, got out of it with only 1 Baltimore run scoring, and gently places his glove at the top of the dugout steps.
Difference between veterans and rookies.
Strawberry to face Coppinger in the second. Fouls the first pitch back. They are each going through a mental inventory of what happened in the lone at-bat Strawberry has had in his career against Coppinger here in this ballpark last July when Straw homered. And he may have done it again. If it's got the height, it certainly has the distance, and it's into the bleachers. 2 at-bats against Coppinger, 2 home runs, 3-1 New York.
And we've talked about how hard Coppinger throws. Both of the home runs have come on off-speed pitches. He threw a fastball by Darryl Strawberry. He was late on the first pitch, so he takes something off of this second pitch and allows Darryl Strawberry to catch up with it. Look at that.
The only question was whether it would be high enough, because the wall in right is higher than anywhere else in this ballpark, but he got it up over that out-of-town scoreboard and into those bleacher seats. O'Neill swings and misses. Coppinger, well, we'll get back to that in a moment. Let's take another look at Strawberry's swing.
And this is why Joe Torre has him in the lineup. He wants to try to match the Orioles, who have 9 players in their lineup, had 9 players last night who hit 20 or more home runs. That's why Straw was in there.
The Yankees have not been kind to Coppinger. 1 appearance against them in the regular season, 4 innings, 5 runs. And here tonight, they jump on him for 3 in the first inning, plus 1 batter.
You know, Joe, you talked about Paul O'Neill in the series in New York, and it's the left hamstring for him and the problem that he has in driving off that back leg. And it's still evident here tonight in his first AB that he's having problems.
Called strike 3.
He's limping noticeably as he goes back to the dugout. And again, as I said earlier, I was really surprised that he was in the lineup tonight. But he was feeling good. He was happy. Said, I'm ready to play. And Coppinger's last pitch, this is a fastball right around the outside corner. And O'Neill looked. Here it is one more time. Right on the corner. Good fastball. And got him looking.
Dunk into the plate, taking ball 1.
That picture of O'Neill striking out there was worth 1,000 words, in that you could see him bailing out a little bit to try to protect on the inside pitch because he can't get to it. With the bad hamstring, he cannot generate enough bat speed with his legs to be able to pull the ball and handle the pitch inside. So he was pulling out a little bit, and the ball away has no chance of hitting.
As we mentioned the other day at Yankee Stadium, if this were the middle of the year, he wouldn't be playing today, and he might, in fact, be on at least the 15-day disabled list. Coppinger with a nice play. And throwing Duncan out. But in these important games, O'Neill's practically begging Torre to pencil him in, and he's just trying to gut his way through it.
You know what he told me tonight, Bob? They've done everything with him. I mean, they've tried shots, they've tried liniments and oils and everything else. Tonight, it was horse liniment. He told me put on his leg for extra heat. I mean, really hot stuff, and then wrap it to try and keep it hot and keep it loose.
Horse liniment.
That's what he said. Yep.
I'm just absorbing that information. You were expecting me to say something. All right. You provide your own sound effects. You can.
Hello. No, that's what he told me.
We'll give you a citation for digging that information up. 3-0. Was the best I could do. What can I tell you? pitch to Girardi is in there. This, of course, big horse racing country with Laurel and Pimlico nearby. Pimlico, the site of the Preakness. Full count, probably an ample supply of horse liniment around Baltimore. The 3-2 pitch. In the air to right. Bonilla going back. Turns the other way, almost to the fence to make the catch. Strawberry opens the inning with a homer. Then Coppinger sets down the next three. It's 3-1 New York. On to the bottom of the second. Ripken, Incaviglia, and Devereaux. Cal is hitting .387 overall in the postseason. And as you see, .308 in this series. He knocked in 2 runs against Cleveland. He hasn't hit one out in the playoffs yet. First postseason action in 13 years since the Orioles won the pennant and beat your Phillies in the 1983 World Series.
Yeah, you had to remind me of that, didn't you? I still think the Phillies were the better team, but obviously they didn't play the best.
You won game 1.
Yes.
And then they breezed to the next 4 wins.
Didn't breeze now.
They won them. They won all 4 in a row.
All right.
They were tough, hard fought.
Right. I like that better. And they had an unlikely MVP that year, Rick Dempsey. And they had Cal Ripken on the team, Eddie Murray. They had a lot of fine hitters, people that you were worried about. And Rick Dempsey was the hero.
1-0 pitch from Rogers to Ripken. And as always, when you talked about the Orioles of those years, that was post-Earl Weaver. Joe Altobelli, in his first year as their manager, took them all the way to the World Championship. Weaver had retired prior to that season, but the Orioles of the 60s, 70s, and early 80s always had great pitching. One and two.
There's one of those change-up curves. He pulled a string on a breaking ball that time and had Ripken way out front. And when Rogers is really right, that's what you're going to see. And it's almost to the point where you've got to sit on a certain pitch against this guy or make up your mind, either to try and pull or make up your mind dead set to hit him to right and try to hit him hard that way.
2-2.
Well, the change of pace is such a great pitch. I mean, you don't really realize how much work a pitcher can do with it. You've got to set it up, of course. The fastball sets everything else up. But when you've got that kind of change of pace and the great motion to go with it, it makes a hitter look awfully silly sometimes. It's embarrassing.
Fouls it off his foot. Postseason games don't count, obviously, toward Ripken's Ironman streak. Actually got his back leg. So Ripken's total right now of consecutive games played in regular season action stands at 2,316 and counting. Full count. It was last September in this ballpark, one of the great days in baseball history, when he passed Lou Gehrig. But there was another milestone of sorts on June 14th of this year when he set the world record, if you will, at 2,216 when he passed Sachio Kinugasa of the Hiroshima Carp. Hit solidly. Jeter dives, smothers it from his knees. He got it.
You talk about a big league play. That is a big league play. To be able to dive and throw from your knees and throw that accurately is just amazing. I mean, this is a great play. And Ripken has made a few of himself on players that have hit the ball up the middle. Now watch this. He extends out fully. Got a great jump on that ball, first of all. Now watch, he doesn't have time to get up. So he throws from his knees, and he has enough on it to get Ripken. Now, I mean, look at this. This is just beautiful. But starting back at the beginning, he got a great jump on the ball. Nice play at first base by Martinez, too, to hold the corner of the bag.
That's as good as I've seen all year long, Joe. In a long, long time for a shortstop to throw from that position and get that much on it, too. What a play.
In Cavilla now. Jeter getting the uniform dirty early. Yankees leading 3-1 in the bottom of the second. One more look at it.
And, Bob, you made a great point last night talking about Jeter. You said, as great as he is, he may never start an all-star game at shortstop in the American League because of Alex Rodriguez. I mean, that is just a magnificent play there. That's all you can say.
This is in Cavilla's first at-bat of this series. He was 1 for 5 in the division series against Cleveland. Most of those figures were compiled with the Phillies earlier this year. Center field, Bernie Williams coming on, digging hard, gets there. Two nice defensive plays by the Yankees here in the second. And tomorrow, NBC Sports presents more of the NFL beginning at noon Eastern time with the pregame show. Greg Gumbel and the trio to his left there. And then most of you will see an AFC East showdown, the Bills hosting the Dolphins. Others will get the Steelers and the Bengals, or perhaps the Jets and the Jaguars, or the Oilers and the Falcons. Your local listings will tell you what game is on in your area.
Big day of football tomorrow. Is Jim Kelly in that starting lineup tomorrow or not? Do we know that yet or not? I'm asking you now. This is nothing to laugh about. Is he in or not?
He is still listed as questionable.
You got that right, buddy.
There you go. You know, I would advise the viewers to tune in at noon Eastern time. I'll bet Greg Gumbel will lead with that information. Devereaux. 351 lifetime with a homer against Kenny Rogers, which is why he, rather than Surhoff, is in left field tonight. The 2-1 pitch. Fouled off. He's seen action as a defensive replacement in left and as a pinch runner, Devereaux has, but he has only 2 playoff at-bats this October. 0 for 2 thus far.
Well, he's a good fastball hitter, and he handles left-handed pitching very well, so that's the other reason he's in there. And Surhoff's knee and his hamstring is bothering.
Full count. Surhoff had a great division series against Cleveland, hitting .385 with 3 home runs. Hasn't been as productive against the Yankees in the LCS.
Had a heck of a year all around for the Orioles. He really did. 21 home runs. He had a big year. Played left, played third. There he is.
And could be important off that bench, as could Eddie Murray late in this game with pitching changes and whatnot. 3-2 pitch. Devereaux strikes out. Rogers works a perfect second with the help of his defense. And it's still 3-1 Yanks.
Welcome back to Baltimore. I'm Jim Gray. If you notice the smoke rising from right field, it's Boog's Barbecue. We're out here in right field with Boog Powell, the former Oriole great. Of course, those great teams in 1969, 70, and 71. You got 4 of these concessions in here. Little barbecue, huh?
Well, barbecue is an attitude. And we have established an attitude out here on Utah Street. And it's a happening. It really is.
What about those great Oriole teams? Do you look back and do you feel that those may have been some of the greatest teams of all time?
Yeah, you know, we had some great pitching and we had some great defense. And if we got any offense, we won. And that's just pretty much the story of that ball club, just like this ball club right here. Of course, they got 8 guys that got 20 home runs, but I'm not sure if their pitching is quite as good, and their defense might not be quite as good as what we had.
As we watch Derek Jeter at the plate, Boog, let me ask you just real quickly. Davey Johnson, he was a teammate of yours. Did you feel he was managerial material?
No doubt about it. Ted Williams used to come in the clubhouse all the time in Baltimore, and Davey had him over in the corner for about 45 minutes talking about hitting and talking about the finer parts of it. And, of course, Davey brought in the computers with Earl Weaver. And, of course, David major down in Texas and all that stuff. And he was the one that started Earl Weaver using computers and stuff, so as how to position your fielders and your, you know, as to who was pitching and where to position your players.
Well, the guys are getting very hungry in the booth, Boog. They'd like to know where are their meals.
You mean you didn't get it yet? It was on the way just a little while ago. It must have been hijackers.
You're hiding it all. Let's go back to you, Bob.
All right, thanks, Jim and Boog. One out on the Jeter fly ball, and now Boggs lifts one wide of third, and Zeile runs out of room in pursuit. 0-2 the count. Those Oriole teams, especially the three consecutive pennant winners of 69, 70, and 71, although they lost 2 of the 3 World Series to the Miracle Mets in 69, and then after winning the first 2 games, the Pirates came back on them in 71. Roberto Clemente just went wild in that series, and Steve Blass pitched very well. And because of that, that Oriole team doesn't get quite its due when they talk about the great teams of all time, but I think they should be in the discussion with the Oakland A's, who followed immediately with their dynasty, and then your Big Red Machine, which came right on the heels of the Oakland championships.
No, I agree with you. They have the makings of great ball clubs. And Boog said it best. They had good pitching, good defense, and they also had good hitters on that ball club. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Hall of Famers in Palmer, Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson. Earl Weaver makes the Hall of Fame as their manager. Called strike 3. Boggs now 0 for 2 tonight and hitless since his first at-bat of the playoffs.
I think if you're going to face Wade Boggs tonight, this is all he should see is hard stuff. He has shown that he cannot get around on the fastball. I would just wear him out with fastballs in and then try to finish him off away, because Wade Boggs is not the Wade Boggs that we're used to seeing. He's had a bad back, and in having that problem, he's developed some bad habits in his swing, and he's not getting the barrel of the bat out there.
A lot of guys wouldn't catch up to a 91-mile-an-hour fastball in that zone either.
And a strike to Bernie Williams, who launched a home run his first time up.
Well, we talked about Coppinger at the top of the show, Bob, the fact that he does throw in the 90s, but that ball that he threw to Williams when he hit the home run was a high-hanging slider.
And immediately comes back inside to Williams with the fastball.
And that one's in there. Coppinger is a big guy, 6'5" and 250. Given name John Thomas Coppinger, but as an infant, his dad nicknamed him Rocky after Rocky Marciano because, and we're just quoting his dad here, he said the kid looked all beat up and ugly when he first entered the world. The kind of parental encouragement you're looking for. The 0-2.
This is exactly how they pitched Bernie Williams last night. Mussina stayed in tight on him, and he had some success. And then they threw him a breaking ball out over the plate, and he singled to left field to tie the ball game last night. They threw him a breaking ball out over the plate tonight, and he hit a 2-run homer. But you see in this at-bat, they are just going to fire him up inside enough and then maybe go away with one pitch.
Williams stepping out. 2 out, nobody on in the Yankee third. They lead it 3-1. 2-2. A 2-run homer by the man at the plate, Bernie Williams in the first. A solo leadoff shot in the second by Darryl Strawberry. A sacrifice fly from Rafael Palmeiro accounts for the Baltimore run.
Well, he's seeing nothing but fastballs in this particular AB. Those last 2 really off the inside corner. Not a bad idea to go down low and away now with a change of pace. Really take something off against Williams.
That 42 miles an hour that you saw up on the screen, you know what that is? That's left over from the catcher's return throw to the pitcher.
Boy, I want to tell you, this is a very close pitch. I don't know how Bernie Williams took this one. He may have been looking inside again because Coppinger threw a fastball about knee-high, and I thought that one had a lot of the outside corner.
Well, everyone was set up inside, though, Bob, and he threw it outside.
Here's the payoff. Grounded to first. Palmeiro to Coppinger covering. And for the first time, Coppinger does not have a rocky inning, a 1-2-3 third. Well, you the Goodyear blimp. Stars and Stripes would be on hand. Up from Pompano Beach, Florida, Captain Richard Daniels at the helm. He's from Burbank, California. Bottom of the third. Chris Hoyles, then back up to the top, Brady Anderson and Todd Zeile against Kenny Rogers, who leads 3-1. Since 1900, there have been 14 perfect games pitched in the major leagues, counting Don Larson's World Series perfect game for the Yankees in 1956. One of them was authored by this guy, Kenny Rogers, 2 years ago for the Rangers against the Angels. In Arlington in July of '94, Rex Hudler, the last out, lining to Rusty Greer in center field. Here's his 1-1 pitch, down low.
Watching both Rogers and Coppinger tonight, and in last night's game also, the umpires have told these guys that they can go to their mouth while they're on the mound. It's that cool here in Baltimore. Normally, you're not allowed to do that, but it's cool enough where they've said it's okay. Rolled foul, full count. Not quite as cold as last night. Last night it was 53 at game time. Tonight, 59. There's a little bit of wind, but not much. It's not terribly uncomfortable, but it is chilly. Chilly enough for Sam Perlauzo to be wearing gloves at third, coaching for the Orioles. That's nippy. Jones. Former Brave. A drive to right center. Very well hit. And on its way out of here. On a 3-2 pitch, Hoyles makes it 3-2. The Orioles back to within a run. Al, we talked about staying on Kenny Rogers and going the other way. If he's going to pitch you that way, go that way. And again, the ball carrying much better tonight. Here it is again. It's around the outside. That's that little tailing fastball. Hoyles stayed right on it and knocked it out of here in right center. Ball really carrying well tonight. Hoyles hit 25 of them during the regular year. Now here's Anderson, who hit twice that many. And he launches one to right. O'Neill to the track. And not quite.
Well, both of those pitches were up. I think that's where Kenny Rogers gets in trouble. The high fastball to Hoyles goes out of here. And watch this pitch. It's a high fastball to Brady Anderson. It's supposed to be down, but it's up. And Brady just misses it. I mean, just barely gets under it. And he still got it to the warning track. At first, Paul O'Neill looked to see where he was, and then he realized, well, this one's going to stay in. I can catch this one.
Three home runs already tonight, and a couple of near misses. Here's Zeile. Singled his first time.
When Kenny Rogers pitched a perfect game, Bob, I saw a lot of that ball game, and he kept the ball down. I mean, he was running the ball away from the right-handers, but keeping it down and then coming up and in with a fastball. His fastball from the first pitch of the ball game, he's had the fastball up. He seems like he has good stuff, but it has been up.
Coppinger, very shaky start, but he's in the game. trailing only 3-2 now. Seated next to David Wells, the Game 2 winner.
And I'm sure Wells is passing on some words of wisdom.
Here's they're just working on that gum. No time for chit-chat. And you got a 5 or 6 piece wad bazooka going.
Coppinger feeling a little better about things now, down by 1 after the home run by Hoyles.
Three-one pitch. Hit hard, and it's by Boggs at third base. Brazil's second hit of the night.
I tell you what, Boggs is probably lucky he didn't get a glove on this ball, because that one would have drug him to death. I mean, that ball was smoked down the third base line. I mean, look at this. I mean, that ball's hit so hard. I mean, no chance for Boggs to do anything.
Maybe even
watch, you'll see Boggs, he doesn't have time to move. I mean, you can't react that quickly when the ball is hit that hard. And you see he's in good fielding position, but he really doesn't have time to react. That ball's on him before he makes a move.
I was going to say, Joe, maybe even more lucky that it wasn't hit right at him.
Well, yeah.
And again, the pitch upstairs looked like a breaking ball. Boehringer now in the Yankee bullpen. Todd Stottlemyre out there talking things over with Girardi and Kenny Rogers. And again, as we've said, and anybody who faces this guy time after time, if he gets upstairs, he's going to get hurt. And the balls that have been hit hard, here it is one more time. This pitch is up about thigh high on Zeal. And again, pitching from behind in the count. There it is. Turned it around and ripped it past Boggs.
One on, one out, one home in the Baltimore third. The Yankee lead cut to 1. Alomar struck out his first time up. A switch hitter who's a bit better from the left side. But this will do. Into right for a hit. Does Zeal challenge O'Neill? He does not. He stops at second.
Well, I believe that the little guys who are not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark should go the other way. We'll take a look at this pitch. Not a bad pitch. That pitch is tailing away. Just good hitting there by Alomar. This pitch is out over the plate and moving away, and he goes that way with it and hits the line drive to right field. And a good play by O'Neill as he charged the ball. Zeal had ideas about going to third.
Now Rogers facing his former Texas teammate Palmeiro.
You know, in this case, Palmeiro now against Rogers, I mean, his control is starting to fade on him a little bit. And it's one of those situations where, as Palmeiro, you can sit here, maybe look breaking ball and really try to hit this guy hard. That's what he got right there, and he pulled it foul.
And the one thing that Rogers has been able to do with Palmeiro is he's been able to start the breaking ball actually behind him. So when Palmeiro goes after it, he's pulled it foul. He's pulled about 4 pitches foul. There's a breaking ball. So he's way out in front because the ball is starting behind him. He has to stay in, and it's really not breaking over the plate. It's just breaking toward the inside corner.
The 1-1 pitch. Tipped it, 1-2. Tried to check his swing, but it made contact with the bat.
This is a big curveball here. An overhand curveball. You can see it start to really go down right about there as Palmeiro tries to stop his swing.
Starting that breaking ball behind Palmeiro. I think he's afraid to hang one.
And time is called. And Girardi will go to the mound. Do you send the runners on a 3-2 pitch with 1 out, Palmeiro at the plate and Bonilla next?
I don't. Well, Bonilla has not been swinging the bat well, but he's always capable of getting hot, so I agree with Uke. I would not send him because you can also take yourself out of an inning. If he happens to make a good pitch and strikes Palmeiro out, you're going to be able to throw the runner out at third base pretty easily because he's not going to be able to get a good jump, and Zeile doesn't run that well anyway.
And especially with a left-handed batter at the plate, makes it easier for the catcher. Boehringer getting ready in a hurry. Rogers lasted only 2 in Texas in his start in the division series. In trouble here in the third in Baltimore. But he strikes Palmeiro out.
And that's why you do not send him, because if he does make a good pitch, then you're out of the inning.
Well, here it is one more time. This is a breaking ball from Rogers. This is a good curveball. Joe talked just a minute ago about really getting up on top. Ball down and away, took something off the breaking ball, and watch Palmeiro way out in front of it. Good pitch by Rogers, and a jam here. Made a good pitch. Good call by Joe Girardi. That may have been when he went out there, Joe, going out there and saying, hey, look, don't be afraid to take something off here. He's looking to hit. You got guys on base, going to be a little anxious, and he went to the change off the breaking ball and picks up the strikeout.
Now Bonilla. 0 for 1 tonight, hitless in this series, 3 for 27 in the playoffs overall.
But the problem is, you know, percentages say he's going to get a hit pretty soon, and if you keep bringing him up here in RBI situations, pretty soon he's going to drive in a run. I mean, he's too good a hitter not to get a base hit eventually.
Knocked home 116 for the year. A ball and a strike.
I think if you're Rogers, you have to continue to take something off your pitches to Bonilla, because all of a sudden Bonilla's out in front of everything. There's that changeup, and he's way out in front. You throw him a fastball, and you can get in trouble. You see what right there? He's way out in front again, and that has been part of his problem. He's been getting out in front of the breaking balls, and they've been throwing the fastballs in under his hands.
Two on, 2 out. Hit sharply toward the hole. Jeter backhands. A peg to second is in time to get the diving Alomar for the force. They get a run on the Hoyles homer, but then they strand 2, and the Yankees cling to a 1-run lead.
And you can see David Cone does more than just pitch for the New York Yankees. He tries to help the pitching coach, Stottlemyre, talk about the arm angles and try to help get into the head of Kenny Rogers by trying to get him to understand exactly what Stottlemyre is talking about.
Todd Stottlemyre, of course, Mel's son, with the Cardinals, who have the 2-1 lead now on the Braves, looking for the upset. Tino Martinez smacks one to right, but right at Bobby Bonilla for the first out. The Cardinals win today at home over the Braves, 3-2. So if the 2-1 leads are extended and the clubs in front go on to win their respective league championship series, we'd have a reprise of the 1964 World Series, the Cardinals and the Yankees. On the other hand, if the Orioles and Cardinals met, you'd have the Audubon Society World Series. Birds of different feathers. College football scores for your entertainment and information. The Braves and Yankees were the favorites as these series began. Cecil Fielder to the plate against Coppinger, struck out his first time. Given their pitching, unless you like Cleveland, and some people did, as the best team in baseball, but I think the consensus has been that the Braves, the defending champions, are baseball's best team because of the depth of their starting pitching and Wohlers in the bullpen, Joe.
Yes.
2-0 pitch is rolled to Alomar, and that's the second out in the Yankee fourth. Go ahead, Joe. Oh, wait 1 second. Here we go with Darryl Strawberry coming to the plate. Let's turn it over to you.
Well, you talked earlier about Strawberry, Bob, and his first time out against Coppinger back in July here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. This is the result of their first meeting. Strawberry Hit it out of here in deep right center against Coppinger. And his first time up tonight. He got into a line drive and hit it out of here in right. 2 ABs, 2 home runs.
Let's see how Coppinger fares this time. Back to the Braves, Joe.
Well, I have felt all year that neither the Cleveland Indians nor the Atlanta Braves were as good a teams as they were last year. I thought because Cleveland made the trade they made in the middle of the season that they weakened themselves a little bit. And I thought with the loss of Dave Justice that the Braves were just not quite as strong. Because you put a guy like Justice in there with McGriff, Chipper Jones, Klesko, he can carry you for a week or two at a time. And that really helps you in the postseason as we saw last year.
Dangerous 2-0 pitch for Coppinger. But he throws it by Strawberry. Well, the Cardinals didn't have an impressive record in winning the National League Central compared to the other playoff teams, but they arrived in the postseason playing very well. Swept San Diego, weren't discouraged by a tough opening defeat against the Braves. They've come back to win the next 2. An upset is not out of the question. What a job Tony La Russa has done with that team.
And remember, it's not always the best team that wins. It's the team that plays best that wins, especially in a short series. Because anybody can win a short series if they have a couple of pretty good pitchers and a good starting lineup. And everyone that's in the playoffs have those qualities.
Full count now to Strawberry, and what an irony it would be if Joe Torre, fired last year in St. Louis when he didn't have anything like the personnel that the new front office regime gave Tony La Russa a year later, if Joe Torre should hook up with Tony La Russa and the Cardinals in a Yankee Redbird World Series. But all that is a long way off. 3-2 pitch. We'll do it again.
Well, I want to tell you, Coppinger again in the 90s. He's throwing some heat tonight. Strawberry's sitting. Fastball, 3-2. And here it is one more time. Strawberry looking fastball. He got it and fouled it back. And this ball is whacked up the middle. It's not a home run. But Coppinger still hasn't figured out how to retire him.
Well, he's flirting in dangerous territory every time he gets the ball down and out over the plate to Strawberry. He threw one up and away for a strike that he couldn't handle. Strawberry does not handle the high fastball well, but he can handle the low heat. This pitch is down, so anytime he gets a ball down, he's capable of hitting it a long way or hitting a bullet through the infield as he does here. He's a very good low ball hitter. In fact, when he first came to the big leagues, and you threw a ball out over the plate, I mean, he may hit it over the left field wall, center field wall, or right field wall. The same pitch, he could hit in 3 different directions. He did not have a zone of where he always pulled the ball if you got it in a certain part of the plate, or he didn't have it where he would go the other way. He just hit the ball all over and deep.
Which brings up O'Neill, who struck out his first time. And there's a ball. Boggs and O'Neill, the perennial 300 hitters who have hobbled through this postseason, reinserted in the lineup tonight. They're combined 0 for 3. Each has struck out once.
There's a certain amount of loyalty that Joe Torre has to both of these players because they're the ones that helped him to get here. So that's the reason that there was no doubt in his mind that he was going to start both of these players in the first game of the LCS, simply because that's who got him here. He wanted to give those guys the opportunity to play. But now that you've gotten into the series, I think you have to win it.
1-0 pitch fouled off. The first 2 games of the World Series and the last 2, if it goes that far, 4 out of the 7 will be in the American League Park. But both of these clubs would have decisions to make in the National League Park without the DH. You remember Cleveland last year played Eddie Murray at first base in Atlanta. They wouldn't be able to do that with Rafael Palmeiro in their lineup, the Orioles, with Eddie Murray this time around. So without the DH, what happens with Strawberry? What happens with Fielder? What happens with Eddie Murray if it's the Orioles? At least for those 3 middle games in the National League Park, Atlanta or St. Louis.
Take a look at that last fastball. Again, Coppinger really trying to stay inside on O'Neill. He really missed inside. O'Neill trying to get out of the way. Watch him back out of the way and then limp. Watch him limp as this thing moves on. He'll limp across the plate. Watch the end of this play. There's the inside fastball. Now watch O'Neill. Watch O'Neill. He's limping. He's limping badly. That left leg is really hurt. You know, you get to a certain point in this game, too, Joe, or in the series, and talking about loyalty and everything else, that goes so far.
Right.
But when guys are really hurting and they're not doing anything for you and they're liabilities sometimes defensively, then you have to start thinking the other way.
The 2-1 pitch hit in the air to left center field and hit very well. Devereaux's going back, but this one is gone.
That'll cure that limp right there.
He doesn't have to sprint around the bases.
And he's not limping, Bob. Look.
Well, you know, when you touch one off, it improves your stride.
It gives you a great home run trot, I'll tell you that.
Opposite field home run for O'Neill, the third Yankee homer of the night. And they're up 5-2.
Well, they tried to pitch him inside. Now watch where this pitch is, out over the plate. That's why he was able to get to it. You know, they pitched him inside. He was having problems with it. You get the ball out over the plate, and he can handle it. Good hitting there.
Boy, and a happy Yankee bench and a happy Paul O'Neill. Waiting a long time for that one.
Well, Coppinger had worked a 1-2-3 third, and he got the first two men in this inning. In fact, he had retired 7 in a row, make it 8 in a row, before giving up a single to Strawberry, and then the homer to O'Neill with 2 outs in this inning. Now Duncan smacks one to dead center. Brady Anderson on the run. This one bounces over the fence for a double. Teeing off on Coppinger in the 4th.
Well, one thing that happens is when you're a fastball pitcher and you lose about 6 inches on your fastball, then they can catch up with you. And remember now, he's going through the order for the 3rd time. Right there's a fastball for Duncan. This is his 2nd time through the order, I should say. And Duncan drills it to straightaway center field. Brady Anderson was playing in shallow. The ball bounces over the fence. But Duncan has always been a good first ball, fastball hitter. And he gets a fastball right there and drills it to center field. Before, in the early innings, you were seeing him catching the ball back behind him on the plate. Now you see them getting the barrel of the bat out front.
Girardi takes a ball. Following the Strawberry homer leading off the 2nd, Coppinger had retired 8 in a row. That got him to 2 out in the 4th. Strawberry singled sharply up the middle. O'Neill drove a homer to left center. Duncan wallops a double to the track in center field in front of the 410 sign. Now Girardi. 5-2 New York.
Well, here's Coppinger. As you look at Arthur Rhodes in the bullpen, here's Coppinger having problems with his breaking ball. And I mean, you're a hitter. What else are you going to do? I mean, you know the guy can't get breaking stuff over. He's having problems with it. You sit on fastballs, and he throws you one in your zone, and you take your cut. And in the case of O'Neill, he goes deep. Big base hit by Duncan. And here is Pat Dobson, the Oriole pitching coach, out there talking things over with Rocky Coppinger. He's telling Dobson, look, I feel good. I feel good. O'Neill hit a pretty good pitch on me. Maybe, maybe not. Pitch around the outside corner about knee high, and he hit it out. It looks like Dobson, I mean, he's going out there. Rhodes wants to get ready. They're trying to get him ready in a hurry. And Dobson maybe not hearing what he wanted to hear from Coppinger.
I don't think Coppinger was hearing what he wanted to hear from Dobson either. Because he seemed to be a little bit upset there.
These fans aren't hearing what they want to hear, because what they're hearing is the crack of Yankee bats.
And it's not what Dobson says. It's what, here's what Davey told me to tell you. If you don't do this.
Yeah, if you don't do this, a shower will be next.
Look, I'm telling you what Davey told me to tell you. That's all. That's all there is to it.
3-0 now. Duncan away from second. Girardi takes a strike. Dobson and Johnson were teammates on those Oriole teams that won the 3 straight pennants. And a walk to Girardi. Now with Jeter coming up, let's see if they come to get Coppinger. They have the left-hander Rhodes throwing, and Jeter, of course, is a right-handed batter. Dobson and Johnson appear to be staying put. Johnson went to the World Series 4 times as a player with the Orioles. 1966 when they swept the Dodgers, then the 3 straight between 69 and 71. Went to the World Series a decade ago with a terrific Met team that beat the Red Sox in an unforgettable World Series. So he's been there 5 times. His opposite number in the other dugout, Joe Torre, has never been to the World Series as a player or a manager, despite a very distinguished career. This could be the year. Jeter has doubled and flied to deep left. Ball one outside.
And Coppinger, I think, has really just lost his rhythm here, because you could see that Hoyles was set up inside, and he missed about 6 inches off the plate outside. So he is not finding his rhythm. He's out of rhythm. He's losing his zone. His release point, everything is about gone. 2-0. And that's one of the problems we talked about earlier, young players being able to harness their anger and use it the right way. There's no doubt in my mind he's still upset with Pat Dobson. When Pat Dobson came out there, he was kind of jawing back at Pat, and I think he's upset. He's still a little bit angry.
Two and one. Still throwing hard.
He may be angry, but he's still throwing well. You're right, Bob.
Well, Jeter helps him out here. It's 2 balls and no strikes. Jeter's sitting on a fastball. He gets the fastball, but you can see it's up and out of the strike zone. And you're right, you can't hit that fastball up there.
Not in the 90s.
Duncan at second, Girardi at first, and the 2-1 pitch coming to Jeter. 2-2.
Well, it's 2-2, and he hasn't thrown a strike yet, so.
And again, there's one of those instances when you know a guy's not going to throw a breaking ball. You know he can't get his breaking ball over. You're sitting fastball probably. You're looking fastball. He does throw you the breaking ball, and you have that half-hearted swing.
It's very hard to criticize anything about Jeter's rookie year. He'll be the rookie of the year in the American League. He hit .314, but he's not the most selective hitter. Struck out over 100 times. That's high for a guy who hits leadoff a lot. Hopped into right, and it looks like that will finish the Yankee fourth. They score a couple, they leave a couple, and they're up by 3 after 3.5. Tonight's American League Championship Series is brought to you by Acura, who invites you to test drive the new CL Luxury Sports Coupe. By new Coors Light wide-mouth cans. Tap the Rockies with a smoother pour by Boston Market. Don't mess with dinner. And by Visa, it's everywhere you want to be. Coppinger is fuming on the Oriole bench.
Well, he was mad at Pat Dobson when Dobson was out there, and he's telling David Wells a set of signs that Hoyles was using, and they ought to go to something else.
Well, I think what he was really talking about there, he's saying that this is the sign he gave me. That's what I threw. Now they're mad at me. So he was going through the signs. He said, this is what he gave me.
Ripken starts it in the bottom of the fourth. He was robbed of a hit on a great play by Derek Jeter in his first at-bat. Incaviglia on deck, and then Devereaux. 5-2 New York, bottom of the fourth.
Saw Joe Girardi try to pull that fastball down around the outside corner. Was a little off the outside, a little bit high. He tried to grab it and pull it down.
Out of play, 2-1. And a strike.
Talked so many times about catchers trying to get a strike for a pitcher. Look at Joe. he pulled that ball down about 6 to 8 inches after making the grab off the outside corner.
And a leadoff walk. Rogers' second walk. Issued a free pass to Brady Anderson, the first hitter he faced.
Well, here comes Mel Stottlemyre out to talk things over once again with Girardi and Kenny Rogers.
They want to give somebody time to get up and start throwing in the bullpen. That's all this is.
Yep. Joe Torre wants this game very badly. Stottlemyre earlier, as you look in the Yankee bullpen. Well, it was David Weathers' middle relief that was one of the keys to victory the last time Rogers started, when Kenny lasted only a couple of innings in Texas a week ago, exactly a week ago, at the ballpark in Arlington. Weathers did a great job in a middle inning stint, kept the Yankees in the game. They came from behind to win it and finished the series. And again, a guy like Rogers, you know, you've got the lead. You've got a 3-run lead at 5-2. You're not out there trying to miss on purpose. Rogers wants to stay in this game, but Torre wants this game. Joe Torre wants this game, and if need be, he's going to be gone. It bounces away from Girardi, and on to second goes Ripken. Wild pitch. Now, this is a tough pitch for Girardi to handle. This is a breaking ball. Down low and inside. Wild pitch. He tries to get his body in front of it. Watch this. You see where Rogers let that ball go? He let that ball go so late. Bouncing down in front of the hitter. It's about a 59-foot curveball. Girardi tried to get his body in front of it. The wind-up is a wild pitch. Incaviglia cuts and misses 1-1.
Well, there are two things happening here. First of all, Joe Torre cannot stay with Rogers too much longer if he's not throwing strikes, simply because psychologically your team is doing everything you want them to do except pitching, and you can't let that destroy what they've done already tonight and let the Orioles back in this ball game.
A line to the right. O'Neill has it fall in front of him. Ripken stops at third. And the Orioles have something going in the fourth.
But the fastball out over the plate, and Joe Torre's up and staring. Fastball out over the plate. Good hitting there by Incaviglia, who likes to pull the ball, but he goes the other way with it, lines it in the right center field for a base hit. Paul O'Neill knows he can't catch it, so he goes over to make sure he knocks it down. But he makes the catch, so he's making sure as that ball almost got by him.
Joe, you have to wonder if O'Neill's got a healthy leg, if he may try to catch that ball.
The ball stayed up there quite a while, but he was playing it the right way. He wanted to make sure, and here comes Joe.
Torre taking his time, giving Weathers more time to get prepared. Rogers is done. Leaves with a 5-2 lead, but hasn't pitched the requisite innings to qualify for the victory. We'll be back. So no sooner does David Weathers come into the game to pitch for New York than Davey Johnson calls Mike Devereaux back. His night ends with just one at-bat. And B.J. Surhoff, the left-handed batter, comes off the bench. 21 homers this year. That's during the regular year. Then he clouded 3 against the Indians in the division series.
Surhoff got off to an unbelievable start this year with the Orioles, Bob. Early in the season, in the May, June, July, he was amongst the league leaders and was a league-leading hitter for a long time. Then tailed off as the season went on. Power numbers picked up this year. Had a big year for Baltimore. Saw a lot of this guy in Milwaukee. Good, solid player.
And he is the tying run at the plate. Ball 1.
And he's another one of those hitters that's from time to time an opposite field guy. And they shade him slightly towards left. But when he sits and makes up his mind, there you see the Yankee outfield slightly towards left. When he makes his mind up, he can pull and hit you deep.
Ripken, who walked, moved to second on a wild pitch and then took third on Incaviglia's single, is at third, and there's Inky at first. Nobody out. Hoyles, who homered off Rogers, is on deck. Surhoff stepped out. He might have been distracted by some security guards who are walking behind the fence, but their heads are in view. Now they disappear, and he fouls it off 1-2.
Normally you would see that when the Yankees were hitting.
Weathers 1-2 pitch. Moves him away 2-2.
David Weathers now. Here's another good fastball inside on Surhoff, trying to jam him. As I said before, don't think that Surhoff for a moment can't pull. If he's looking in there, he'll pull. He'll go to right.
Slices this one foul.
Little outside corner fastball that time, and he went the other way. Another look at that last offering from David Weathers. Right around the outside corner, and Surhoff right on it, and try to go the opposite way.
Two pitch, and it goes out full. The Orioles have no speed on the bases in this situation, with Ripken at third and Incaviglia at first. Incaviglia goes, and the ball is slapped to the right. A run comes home, and Incaviglia will make third. He isn't fast, but they sent him, and that's why it's first and third instead of first and second.
Well, that's a gutsy call by Davy Johnson, because two things can go wrong here. He can strike out, and they're going to throw Incaviglia out, or a line drive hit at someone, and you're right out of the inning. But he takes a chance, and B.J. Surhoff finds the hole on the right side, and by sending him, he does get Incaviglia over to third base, where he can score on a fly ball. O'Neill comes up and fires to third, but no chance. There you see Incaviglia going, fall in the hole. Now watch, O'Neill charges really well and gets off a good accurate throw, but not in time.
So it's 5-3. And here's Hoyles, who went deep as last time.
And getting back to that base hit by Surhoff, Bob, as I said before, when you get behind in the count to him, when he's sitting ahead on you, he'll try to pull, and I mean go deep. And that time, Weathers with a good fastball, and he turned it around to hit it to right.
A pinch single for Surhoff, who'll stay in the game and play left. 1-1. David Weathers in hot water on a chilly night. 27-year-old out of Tennessee. The Yankees are his third big league club. Started in the Toronto organization, then to the Florida Marlins, now New York. In there, 1-2.
He threw a breaking ball away to Hoyles, and then he comes back inside with a fastball that sinks down and in. You see that ball, the rotation is taking it back towards Hoyles for strike two. Good pitch. See, Hoyles goes out there to get the breaking ball, and this one comes back inside.
Surhoff at first, Incaviglia at third. A run home, nobody out. 5-3 New York, and a 1-2 pitch coming from Weathers to Hoyles. Slow roller. It'll get a run home. Boggs only playing for first, and he gets him there. It's 5-4, And the tying run moves up into scoring position.
Everything has happened exactly right for the Orioles this inning. This is a chopper, and it's good base running by Incavilla. There's a slider. Incavilla takes off right away, so no chance for Boggs to come home. The only play he has is to retire Hoyles at first, but it also moves the tying run into scoring position. As you see, the runner's off with the crack of the bat, with good base running at third base there by Incavilla.
Now Brady Anderson, he of the 50 homers for the year and 3 more in the postseason. Walked and flied to deep right. With a man at second, Weathers and Girardi perhaps want to check their signals.
Hey, are these some beautiful crowds, Bob? New York and now here in Baltimore. I mean, the place is both jammed up. Here we're in the 4th inning. Crowd's been standing every time the Orioles come to bat. This whole stadium is up.
And the fans here in Baltimore have been exuberant, passionate, but well-behaved. They'll boo the Yankees. They'll good-naturedly boo Rich Garcia. But there's no angry edge here.
No, it's been great here. And there you get a look at it. This great facility, Camden Yards, and this crowd on their feet. And a great atmosphere in both cities.
After this pitch, you tell me what a catcher and pitcher do to adjust when a runner's at second, peering in and maybe stealing the signs. Here it comes on 1-0. Go ahead.
Well, there's always a different set of signs that you can go to, Bob. Normally, with a runner at second, you do go to a different set of signs. And there are times, and of course, this is all preset. Wipe across your chest, wipe across the mask, wipe down on your leg. I'm talking about the catcher, not the pitcher. You'll go to 2 or 3 different sets of signs. Sometimes fingers don't mean a thing. It's the number of pumps.
Got the corner.
Excuse me, Bobby. Saw Girardi go down 3-4 times. It's not necessarily the number of fingers, it's the pumps. Sometimes it is the fingers. You throw 3 or 4 pitches, 1 fast, 2 curve, 3 change, 4 slider. He might go 2, 4, 1, which makes it's again 2, starting 2, 3, 4, 1 fastball. You'll see him do it here one more time. Let's see if we can peek in on Girardi. 1, 2, 3, 3. See if he's using pumps here. Should be a fastball.
Here's Duncan to backhand and a whirling throw. A good play to get him. Anderson is retired.
Nice play by Surhoff. Nice play by Mariano Duncan. He didn't hit this ball hard, but he hit it in a good spot right up the middle. Now Duncan has to get there, backhand it, and get rid of it quickly because Anderson runs well, and he makes a nice play. Boy, he's got a big glove for a second baseman. Nice play. He caught it down in the web also.
You used to use one of the tiniest gloves ever, right? Almost looked like a kid's glove.
Well, I didn't have big hands.
I've seen guys that drive trucks that use bigger gloves than him.
Look how big that one is.
I can't believe that. I can never believe that, Joe, how small that glove is and how well you handle it. Really, honestly.
Well, generally speaking, a second baseman wants a smaller glove because he doesn't want it to disappear in there on the DP pivot. You want to be able to get to it quickly, right?
Well, I use a small glove because I use 2 hands all the time to catch the ball. But you do not want a big glove, and especially one with an X-web like that, because the ball can get hung up in there.
Boy, that's like an outfielder's glove.
It's like a cesta for highlight.
But I guess he knows what he's doing. It's all a matter of preference and feel. Mark Lemke, one of the fine second bases, uses a very tiny glove in Atlanta.
Jeter gets Zeal at first. The Orioles come back with 2. They leave the potential tying run at third. And it's 5-4 New York after 4. On to the 5th. Surhoff, who delivered a pinch hit, stays in the game, plays left field. Rogers is gone, but Coppinger remains, facing Boggs. And Surhoff's going to get a chance right away. Earlier today, the Cardinals went in front of the Braves 2-1 with a 3-2 win, and it was the former Brave, Ron Gant, who accounted for everything. Took Tom Glavine deep twice. Cardinals lead the series 2-1. Tomorrow, we've got an afternoon game here. 4 o'clock Eastern Time will be on the air with Game 5. And Game 4 of the NLCS is on Fox from St. Louis. Bernie Williams to the plate. Kind of a script reversal here. The Yankees, with 5 runs, manufactured on 3 homers. The Orioles have a homer from Hoyles, but they've also kind of pecked and scratched to get some of their runs. A 5-4 game, the Yankees in front.
Well, Coppinger has received a reprieve. Let's see how he handles this. His team has gotten him back into the ball game, and they're leaving him out there.
A roller to Alomar, and that takes care of Williams.
Well, that's what you want. If you're Coppinger, you want to keep the ball in on Williams, and he pulls a little ground ball to second base. Now watch, they're concentrating on making sure that they get that fastball in tight on him, and he grounds it to second base. See where the target is? Inside corner, and he hits the target. Nice pitching there by Coppinger.
Tino Martinez now to face Coppinger. Tino 0 for 2, grounded out, flied out. And a strike. All 5 Yankee runs on homers. 2 runs shot by Williams in the first, solo by Strawberry in the second. Homer with a man on by Paul O'Neill in the fourth. And that'll make the seats 0-2. The book is closed now on Kenny Rogers. 3 innings plus, 5 hits, 4 runs, all earned, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, can't win or lose.
You know, the thing that you got to like about Coppinger, he's still in the game. He's only down by a run now. His pitching coach comes out there to talk to him. He tells the pitching coach to get back to the dugout. I'll take care of things myself. He's hot, throwing a tantrum in the dugout. He wants to stay in the game. He's still in there and about to get out of the 5th inning.
Almost got out of it with that pitch.
Here it is. That last offering on Tino Martinez just missed the outside corner.
And that makes the seats. You can say it better than that.
Yes. No, I can't.
So.
Yeah, you can. Well, I can, but I want to stay. I want to keep my job. No, I'm just saying. Here's a guy goes into the dugout.
It's a perfect opportunity, though.
Yeah, but I know. But I'm trying to. You know what? I'm trying to make the transition. You know what I'm saying?
The 1-2 pitch.
I got it.
Come on, Uke. America's begging for it.
Okay.
That pitch a couple pitches ago was
just a bit outside.
Thank you.
I know it's going to happen. After the game, you're going to get on me again. That's why I didn't want to do it.
Thank you, buddy. The public service. The 1-2. Popped up. Steele calls. Coppinger works a 1-2-3-5. It's just a 1-run lead. Here comes the Hertz game summary. And it's busy. Williams goes deep in the first. Palmeiro a sac fly in the bottom half. Strawberry a solo in the second. That made it 3-1. Hoyles counters, it's 3-2. O'Neill with a man aboard, it's 5-2. Surhoff a pinch single, it's 5-3. Hoyles scores in Cavilla with a ground out, 5-4. Now Weathers back to work. The game summary brought to you by Hertz. For business, for pleasure. Nobody does it exactly like Hertz. Bottom of the 5th. Alomar, Palmeiro, and Bonilla, and a base hit. Probably extra bases for Alomar down into the corner. And a tying run in scoring position to start the 5th. Robbie now 2 for 3, a single and a double.
Well, it's a hanging breaking ball, and Robbie, who usually hits the ball back through the middle, goes out and gets it and pulls it down the right field line. And it's extra bases right away. And he goes into second for a double. Watch that little breaking ball right there on the inside part of the plate, and he rips it down the line. And it's an automatic double for Roberto.
The Yankees are in the unusual postseason position for them of trying to protect the lead early in the game. And they're not handling prosperity very well. A 3-run lead has all but evaporated. It's 5-4. Man at second, nobody out. The dangerous Palmeiro to be followed by Bonilla, who, if anybody is due, he's the guy, Bonilla. Palmeiro, a sac fly and a strikeout.
Now, this is a tough position to be pitching in if you're David Weathers. You have to try to keep Palmeiro from pulling the ball and keep him in the ballpark. So, it's difficult.
Graham Lloyd is the only lefty reliever the Yankees have. Two and one. If there's a small weakness in the Yankee bullpen, they don't care late in the game, righty-lefty. They want Rivera or Wetland in there against any kind of hitter. But for a situational move, just for a single hitter in the middle of the game, 5th, 6th inning, if you get into that kind of situation, they have only one left-hander, and that left-hander, Lloyd, has not been very effective since they got him from the Brewers.
Although I felt he threw the ball very well in New York, the 2 days in New York. He looked a lot better than we had seen him earlier.
Here's the 2-1 pitch. In the air to left, and that's not going to accomplish what Palmeiro and the Orioles had in mind. Strawberry with the catch.
I talked to Graham Lloyd yesterday, Bob, and I asked him, I said, are you healthy? You really feel good? He said, I'm ready to pitch. He's so excited about being in postseason play. He said, there's nothing wrong with me now. I'm healthy, and I want to pitch. I want to contribute.
Well, I tell you what, David Weathers just did a great job of keeping Palmeiro from pulling the ball. Looked like it was an off-speed pitch, got him out in front a little bit, and you see he's upset because he knows his job was either get a base hit to drive Alomar in or at least pull the ball to the right side, and he didn't either.
Bonilla now turns around to the left side. And a called strike. 0 for 2 tonight. 3 for 28 in the playoffs. Hitless in this series. But always dangerous. And this ball is hit deep to center. Back goes Bernie Williams to the track for the catch. Alomar tags and advances to third, but with 2 outs.
Well, the failure by Palmeiro to pull the ball immediately cost them a run. It may eventually cost them the tying run this entire inning, but there's no doubt he would have been able to score on this ball by Bonilla. The ball was away from him just enough that he could not get it out of the ballpark.
Yeah, he didn't get it all, Joe. He didn't hit it on a sweet spot. You're right. When he hit it, when he made contact, he thought he may have gotten enough. Not tonight. There's Williams with plenty of room near the warning track. There's the Oriole bench. They think maybe. Palmeiro said, nah.
So Weathers gets both Palmeiro and Bonilla, and now has to retire Ripken. It'll take something from Cal to get Alomar home here. Called strike.
That fastball there, I think, is his most effective pitch against right-handed hitters. The ball starts toward the middle of the plate and really runs in, and they think it's going to run off the plate, but it catches a little bit of the plate. That, along with his breaking ball, makes him pretty effective against right-handed hitters. There it is again. I don't think Girardi's happy with that call. But watch how Girardi catches the ball. He actually pushes the glove out of the strike zone. There's the one I'm talking about. See it tailing back in, but see, and watch how Girardi catches this ball. So he catches it going out of the strike zone and tries to raise it back up.
Two and one to Ripken. Girardi at first couldn't find it. It was lying right there by the plate.
That's the second time that's happened this inning. He smothered another ball he thought might have gone through his legs, but it was in his glove. Another low pitch.
Joe, that pitch that was caught by Girardi, it's the style of gloves that catchers use today. Years ago, you saw catchers with that smaller glove with the pocket, you know, just where the ball just barely fit in. Tried to catch that ball palms up. It makes it a different look for the umpire. Most catchers today, because of the style of glove, it's almost like a first baseman's glove. They always try to catch them kind of backhanded.
2-1 pitch. Boggs on the short hop. Ripken's retired. They leave Alomar at third. And the Yankees hold on to a one-run lead after 5. Well, it's only the 6th, but Davy Johnson knows in a real sense it's later than that, because if they don't score in their next at-bat, they're going to see Rivera in the 7th. They're an inning away from Rivera. They had Alomar on base with a double to lead off the 5th, the potential tying run. They couldn't get him home. Even though they scored 2 runs in the 4th, they left a man at third with 2 out to end the inning. So they're looking at Rivera and then Wetland unless they do something in the 6th. Coppinger labors on. 1-1 to Fielder.
And another way the Orioles are flirting with fire is leaving Coppinger out there and maybe giving up one more run, because one more run would be more really on the score than just one on the scoreboard. Because as you mentioned, getting through to the 7th inning, you're going to see Rivera and Wetland, and you can give them, if you give them a 2-run lead, it may put the game out of reach for the Orioles.
Fielder's 0 for 2. 2-2 to the Yankee DH. The Orioles have the left-hander Arthur Rhodes and the right-hander Alan Mills throwing in their bullpen. And a full count to Cecil.
One of the things I've learned about Cecil during these 2 series is that he takes the big cut, but when he gets down 2 strikes, kind of shortens up and becomes a little more selective. Unless you challenge him with some high heat.
And unless he's sitting 3-2.
Yeah.
Who cares sitting 3-2, Joe? Leading off an inning. This is that last fastball.
Yeah, that was your
He didn't hold nothing back on that.
That was your full button popping swing. And a bouncer to Alomar. All the time in the world. 1 out. Our friends in the blimp. The 70th year for Goodyear blimps, making appearances over major sporting events. The Stars and Stripes. Meanwhile, back on terra firma, a trip to the mound. Davy Johnson wants the ball. Coppinger leaves. All things considered, it could have been worse. He got him this far, down by only 1.
Well, if you didn't guess who it was, that's David Weathers. David Wells right next to him. Rocky Coppinger, David Wells right next to him. He even had me fooled with the towel. David Wells saying, don't worry about a thing. You pitched a good ball game. Give up 6 hits, down by only 1, and in the 6th inning. He did. He pitched all right. I thought he pitched all right. Don't worry about it. We'll get back for you. That's what David Wells is telling them. You're in it, and so are we.
Arthur Rhodes, the lefty, in to face Strawberry, who homered and singled against Coppinger. Coppinger's done. Could be the loser, can't be the winner. And a strike to Straw.
Well, Rhodes has a good fastball, and you just saw the hard breaking ball that he throws. But he can handle left-handed hitters very well.
moves them away, keeping them loose. Rhodes has been used occasionally as a starter, mostly out of the bullpen.
Well, you can see that Darrell does not like the location of this pitch, and he tried to make eye contact with Rhodes after the ball comes up and in, but Rhodes just took the ball, turned, and got ready for the next pitch.
Which gets the outside corner.
That was a 93-mile-an-hour fastball that he moved Strawberry back with. There's Coppinger. That was that fastball. Yeah, inside. Nothing wrong with that pitch. What a difference a pitcher makes in a hitter, huh, Joe?
Yeah.
I mean, you got Coppinger out there with Strawberry earlier, and he's throwing fastballs, throwing hard, around the knees, in Strawberry's zone, and he's having some good whacks. Here, with Rhodes throwing hard and got that good breaking ball, Straw's given just a little bit.
The 2-2 pitch.
Yes.
Got him.
Yeah, that'll do it every time. 93-mile-an-hour fastball one more time from Arthur Rhodes. Moved him back, inside fastball, through the breaking ball, and then on the outside, here's that fastball, and Strawberry, look, watch this. Can't get any better than that. Got him looking.
Now O'Neill, hitting just 150 in the postseason entering the game, struck out his first time, but then broke out of it with an opposite field home run, a 2-run shot.
O'Neill trying to check his stance there because he bailed right away. And he's trying to check to see where he stepped. He doesn't want to step on Jose Cardenal down there at first base.
2 out in the Yankee 6th.
You know, no matter how long you've been around, Joe, and how long you've hit against certain guys, there are those that do make you give a little bit, make you bail a little bit.
A lot of times you pick the ball up better from some pitchers than others.
I like to pick it up after they dropped it. That was about it.
Tell you what, Arthur Rhodes he had Strawberry overmatched, and he seems to have O'Neill overmatched as well. I mean, he's throwing hard, and he has a good hard breaking ball.
Well, Johnson and Dobson had this inning figured out. They hoped Coppinger would get fielder. Then they were going to Rhodes in any case to face the 2 left-handers, Strawberry and O'Neill. And Coppinger did, in fact, get fielded to bounce out. So this is unfolding according to plan for these 2. Coppinger seems to be enjoying himself. Kenny Rogers remaining on the bench.
A little bit like Dave Stewart's eyes.
Yeah, he does. Yep. Sure does. You're right.
They always pull a bib down so you can't see it very well, see their eyes very well.
Just hangs in there.
I tell you, I was going to say, Joe, I think sometimes you do a hitter a favor when you throw him a breaking ball like that, especially if it hangs up where it did on O'Neill. He came back on Strawberry with that fastball and got him looking. See what he does here with O'Neill. Because he's throwing hard, real hard.
A pop-up that may stay in play. Zeal near the coach's box has it. Rhodes comes in and is very effective. To the bottom of the 6th, the Camden Yards, 5-4 Yanks. We come back to a chant of Eddie, Eddie, as Eddie Murray comes off the bench to hit for Incaviglia with the right-hander on the mound. They go to the switch hitter Murray, removing the right-handed swinging Incaviglia, who was 1 for 2 while he was in there. So Pete is done, and Murray will remain in the lineup as the DH. Weathers 1-0 pitch, misses 2-0.
Talked about Arthur Rhodes throwing in the 90s, 93, and maybe even a little bit better. Weathers still in there at the 90-mile-an-hour mark, 91 maybe.
Weathers has good stuff in that his ball really tails away from the left-handed hitter and tails in tight on the right-handed hitter. So I think that's his best pitch, his fastball. And he does have a breaking ball, but I think his fastball is his best pitch.
The 2-1 pitch. And the count evens. Surhoff on deck.
Pretty good indication right there just how hard David Weathers is throwing. He's behind 2-0 on Murray. Throws with a fastball. The 2-0 pitch. Murray fouled that one back. Here's a 91-mile-an-hour fastball. And Murray again a little bit tardy on a pitch about belt high.
But with good movement, moving away from Eddie.
And it's popped up back of second. Jeter is retreating into left center, and this time he's calling emphatically as he makes the catch. After a couple of misadventures earlier in this series, Don Zimmer and Joe Torre have been imploring Jeter to take charge on balls like that, and he did. Tomorrow after the NFL on NBC, join us for Game 5 of this series, headed against Erickson, 4 Eastern Time, 1 Pacific on NBC.
Remember on those first couple of miscues that Jeter made on those pop flies in games 1 and 2? Bob, he was out there with his back to the infield. This time, backpedaling. He ran out, then backpedaled, and set himself and made the catch.
Surhoff had a pinch hit RBI single in the 4th.
Here's another look at Jeter. Now he's backpedaling. He's got his back to the outfield now. Talking about earlier, those first couple of games, games 1 and 2, when he went out with his back to the infield and gave up on 2 pop flies that should have been caught.
It appears that Weathers doesn't care about the weather. On a brisk night, no sweatshirt.
Pitchers, you know, are in a little different universe anyway.
Oh, those long-standing antagonisms are tough to let go of, aren't they? Bernie Williams in center. Surhoff is retired.
Bob, if you think I'm bad about pitchers, Sparky Anderson, he had a lifetime average in Major Leagues of 190. He hated his own pitchers on his own team.
That's why he used to yank him out of the game.
Oh, yeah, that's why they called him Captain Hook.
Well, David Weathers may be an out away from delivering his team to Mariano Rivera in the 7th. Rivera not throwing at this point. Jeff Nelson is the right-hander, joining Graham Lloyd. David Cone, Kenny Rogers.
Well, I think what Joe Torre is trying to do is make sure he gets through the 6th inning. And Wells, I mean, he can make sure he gets through the 6th inning. Now all of a sudden, Rivera can start throwing in the bottom. I mean, the top of the 7th, and he could be ready for the bottom of the 7th. And there you see Girardi limping around.
He must have, did he turn his ankle or something on this pitch? I don't think this ball was in the dirt.
Well, remember, he's had a bad ankle before. Take a look.
Take a look one more time. This is a breaking ball on Hoyles. And let's see. No, it was in the dirt. And got him, I believe, off the, it got him on the heel of the hand and then maybe on the knee. And again, the shin guards come over the top of the knee. That's one of the great things that catchers have going today. Years ago, shin guards used to come up to your knee, just to the front of the knee, not over the top. And that one appeared to get Girardi on top. Sometimes if it hits right, even though the shin guard protects it, it gives you a stinger.
1-1. The tools of ignorance couldn't prove it by this postseason. Oates and Bochy got their teams, former catchers, into the playoffs. Joe Torre, former catcher, has his team this far. Broadcast booth loaded with former backstops.
There's
Renly and McCarver and Euchre.
There's only a few of us that deserve that title.
The title of ignorant or catcher?
Ignorant. There you are. Kevin Kennedy, Jimmy Leland, Bob Boone, Terry Bevington, the White Sox.
Bevington just rehired by the White Sox. 3-1 3-1 now to Hoyles.
I always figured the other guys on the rest of the field were the guys, you know, without the tools of ignorance. Who'd want to stand out there with some of the stuff some of these pitchers throw with nothing in front of you or something to protect you?
Trying to load up on the 3-1 pitch, but Weathers threw it by him. Full count.
Weathers just has such good movement on his fastball, and he throws hard, so it's very difficult for right-handers, I believe, to really handle him consistently well.
Two out, nobody on, and before the 3-2 pitch, Hoyles backs out. Andy Pettitte, tomorrow's starter, Cy Young Award candidate. He'll hook up with Scott Erickson again in Game 5. Will it be all even, or will the Yankees be looking for the clincher? Still a full count to Hoyles, who has homered and had an RBI ground out. They say of the Orioles that they're a very placid team. Those who are around the team every day make that observation. Lots of veterans, very calm. In fact, some have criticized them for a lack of passion. The 2 games they've lost in this series were tough defeats to absorb. The disputed call in Game 1, losing the lead late, and squandering a great pitching performance by Messina last night. But if anything tonight, we sense a little bit more of a feeling of urgency, a little bit more of an edge around this club tonight.
I agree with you.
Now to play again.
But I think that lack of, I don't want to say lack of passion, the fact the control that they had after the first game helped them in the second game. So it's a two-edged sword. Sometimes it helps you to overcome tough losses, but other times when you're even, you want to be able to push a little harder.
A broken bat looper and a base hit. Good night for Hoyles. 2 for 3, and the one time he was retired, he brought home a run on a ground out.
Here's that last pitch on Hoyles. You know, a lot of people here in Baltimore, as you see Joe Torre coming out to make a pitching change. Here's that last offering on Hoyles. It was a broken bat job in the center. But a lot of people here have been upset with Hoyles because of his defensive disabilities sometimes. But I'll tell you what, any guy that hits 25 to 26, 27 home runs a year for you and does a pretty decent job behind the plate, and I think he does, I'll take him any time. Chris Hoyles.
He's at first with 2 out. Weathers is leaving. They go to the bullpen, I would guess, for the lefty Lloyd to face Anderson. Graham Lloyd, who has been effective in the past with the Brewers, but as you see in 13 games with the Yankees, he's posted the kind of numbers that make you cringe. Had a tender elbow. There was considerable doubt that he'd be placed on the postseason roster, but Joe Torre and Mel Stottlemyre wanted a left-hander for situations like this. They've used him sparingly in the playoffs, but when they have used him, he's done well.
Yeah, he has, Bob, and that's the big thing with Graham Lloyd. He's not one of those guys that you can pitch an inning or so every day. If you use him a couple of days in a row, you got to sit him down. He really does have good stuff. Good fastball. The curveball gives him problems from time to time, but he's got a good fastball and a good cutter.
One of a handful of big leaguers who have come out of Australia. Born in Australia, returns there in the offseason.
That's what he does so well against the left-handed hitter. He's tall. He's very tall and lanky.
6'7".
And again, he'll come sidearm every once in a while. He's basically 3/4 to over the top. And there's that little cut fastball down and away from Brady Anderson.
So the man from down under comes from over the top. And this one is popped up. Jeter says to Strawberry, get out of here. This is mine. And that finishes Baltimore in the 6th. Lloyd comes in, does his job, and it remains 5-4 New York. As anticipated, there he is. As the Yankees bat in the 7th, Mariano Rivera gets ready to come on in the bottom half. David Weathers did his job in his stint and actually becomes the pitcher of record because Kenny Rogers wasn't around the required 5 innings for a starter to be eligible for the win. Graham Lloyd was asked to face one batter. He retired him, Brady Anderson. And we're going to see Rivera next. With at least a one-run lead, the Yankees trying to add to it now. Alan Mills comes into the game. And a roll at a short. Ripken to Palmeiro. And Duncan is out to start the 7th. NBC Sunday starts with Dateline at 7, 6 Central. That's if Game 5 here moves along at a very brisk pace. Then on an all-new Third Rock, it's the return of Seinfeld's Wayne Knight, plus an all-new Boston Common and the world premiere thriller Night Visitors. A great night of all-new shows, NBC Sunday. Normally, when they issue you uniform number 75, this is Girardi getting a contact lens.
No, what he's doing, Bob, is he's giving Rivera time to warm up out there. That's what he's doing. See, remember Duncan hit the first pitch, ground ball to shortstop, and he was on his way to the plate and realized that Rivera hadn't been up that long, turned around and went back, and the umpire understands that too. That's exactly what he was doing. He's giving Rivera more time to warm up out in the bullpen. See, look at that. Now he just pats him on the cheek. Okay, you're all right now.
Does he wear contacts? Yeah, but it's not his. It's somebody else's. We're trying to find out whose it is.
Oh, you know, you can just claim you got a speck in your eye. Sure. One of those things is very difficult to refute.
Yeah. But him being a catcher, you know, he knows that, yeah, Davey's laughing. Yeah, everybody knows what's going on because Rivera just did not have enough time to warm up yet.
Little gamesmanship. Now Girardi steps in and takes a fastball high. Started to say that normally when they issue you uniform number 75, you figure you're not going to be around long. That's not a star's number, but it's Mills' number. It's a lineman's number in football. Usually don't see numbers that high in baseball.
Lineman's number for the phone company, too, when you're done playing.
Here you see why they like Girardi so much. He's a smart player. I guarantee, I mean, he's taken a couple of pitches, and he's going to take another one. See, his job right now, he thinks, is to get Rivera as much time as he can give him to get loose. Now, he's done that, and now he's going to go ahead and swing for himself.
Well, we know, on the other hand, that Duncan, who led the inning off, isn't going to be patient for anybody. He comes out of the on-deck circle swinging.
Duncan, yeah, he comes back to the bench. They say, you know, we got Rivera trying to get ready. Yeah, so what? That was a pitch I could handle. So what?
One out, nobody on. And a 2-2 pitch coming from Mills to Girardi in the Yankee 7th. Squibbed foul, and Cardinal can't make the play. Tough to do with those gloves on. Presents the ball to the young man wearing the Ripken jacket. Who didn't have to interfere to get a souvenir. Good behavior rewarded.
That young fella could play a little bit too, Jose Cardinal.
Girardi strikes out.
Well, Girardi may have taken one for the team because he had to take a 2-0 fastball right down the middle. Then he ends up having to chase this 2-strike slider in the dirt. But he knew his job was to get as much time for Rivera as he could, and he did a good job of that. That was a good pitch from Mills, slider down and away. And he's checking to make sure that, have we given you enough time, or do we need for someone else to lose a contact?
A strike to Jeter.
You get to that point, Joe, when they look to the bullpen, and either the bullpen coach or somebody out there puts their hat up in the air, takes their hat off and puts it up in the air. When Rivera's ready, everybody takes their hats off. They're all waving them out. The 8 guys are waving hats. Yeah, he's ready.
Jeter is doubled, then flied out twice. Rivera will face Zeal, Alomar, and Palmeiro in the bottom of the 7th. reads Stottlemyre's lips. That was moments ago. Yep, he's ready. He's ready. That's out of play. 2-2. Listen to that glove pop down there.
Well, one thing to remember now, I mean, he's got a one-run lead. He's a good pitcher, but these Orioles have some good fastball hitters on their ball club.
A called strike 3. Mills works a perfect 7th. Fanning 2 in the process. Stretch time in Baltimore. Tonight's American League Championship Series is brought to you by Buick and your local dealers. Remember Buick, the new symbol for quality in America. By Stanley since 1843. Stanley has been helping people do things right. By Dean Witter, there are many ways to measure success. We measure it one investor at a time, and by smooth, refreshing Old Milwaukee, an Old Milwaukee Light it doesn't get any better than this. Which is maybe what the Yankees are thinking, since they have the lead, and they have Rivera in and Wetland waiting. Here is the Panama Express. Slender 27-year-old, 6'2", and 168. His numbers for the year: he allowed only 1 home run all year in over 100 innings of work. But the man he'll face third in this inning, Rafael Palmeiro, hit it. The Orioles were one of the few teams that had any success at all against him. 2 of his 3 defeats were at the hands of the Orioles. They're the only team that twice scored more than 1 run against him. But in Game 1 of this series, he worked 2 shutout innings and got the victory when Bernie Williams homered off Randy Myers in the bottom of the 11th. Luis Sojo, who turned in a sparkling play in the 9th last night when he came in for defense, makes an earlier appearance this time in the bottom of the 7th. Mariano Duncan is out. Zeal has 2 singles and 3 at-bats.
The thing that makes Rivera so tough is that he has a slow wind-up, easy motion, and the ball just jumps on you. A lot of guys that jump at you, you get ready a little quicker, but he has such a slow, easy delivery. And you see that ball's right on top of you with one flick of the wrist.
He just seems like he does it so effortlessly, Joe. I mean, right over the top, and it's a 4-seam fastball. Here it is. This is a popping fastball, and another. And to take nothing away from the Orioles, they're a solid hitting ball club with excellent power, and it's only a 5-4 game. Not to say that Baltimore's out of this thing by any means, but this guy throws awfully hard.
A 90-plus fastball with movement is very good. In this guy's case, we're talking 96, 97.
And the thing about guys like this, Bob, is the fact that they not only throw hard, but they pitch corners. They spot pitch you. It's bad enough you're facing a guy that throws that hard, but when they start doing the corner stuff on you, it makes it that much tougher.
Zeal. Boggs has a tough play across the diamond to get him.
I tell you what, that was a much more difficult play than it appeared, because he had to fight it for the hop. He had to fight over to move toward the line and also to get it on the hop. So you give them the line because you don't think they're going to pull Rivera that often. See how tough a hop that was? He got the in-between hop, knocked it down, picked it up, and threw Zeal out. You don't cover the line because you do not feel right-handers are going to pull him. But they did. Zeal does pull it, but a good play there by Boggs.
Now Alomar, who's 2 for 3. Boggs has been a Gold Glove winner, and he's done it late in his career. He was a great hitter from the time he came up to the Red Sox, but his defense improved consistently. He really worked at it. One and one. Davey Johnson running out of outs. A couple of times early, The Orioles were a Yankee base hit or two away from being buried in this game. It could have been broken open. Rocky Coppinger very shaky at the start. But he pulled it together more or less, and they rallied a bit, and now it's a ball game. Hit to short. Jeter takes care of Alomar.
Well, we talked about the Yankees having the second best defense in the league this year. Texas was supposedly the best. But I tell you what, these infielders for the Yankees have good hands. I mean, they're catching in between hops, and they're cradling them. And I'm watching Jeter. I mean, he just catches everything out in front and brings the ball to him. Real soft hands.
So here's the one guy who has taken Rivera over the wall this season. For 2 with a sacrifice fly tonight. Two homers in this series, 3 in the postseason, 39 for the regular year. 5-4 Yankees, bottom of the 7th. That fastball is high. And it's 3-0.
Well, do you let him go 3-0 here? I say yeah. But I really do. I think if he gets a fastball to hit here, Joe, down by 1, I say let him go.
I agree, but I think they're aware of that also. And they're not going to let him go. Yeah, I don't see this as a big problem here. I think Rivera realizes that Bonilla has not been swinging the bat well. Palmeiro has hurt him before. And 3-0, you're just not going to give in and throw him a fastball down the middle.
So they're going to make Bonilla bust out of it and prove that he can. Palmeiro, the tying run at first with 2 out. Bonilla 0 for 3 tonight. Hitless in this series. And his postseason average plummeting toward 100. He's 3 for 29. Ball 1.
I know how Bonilla feels. I've been there, done that myself.
Bobby Bowe got Rivera for a homer last year. Check swing foul, 1-1.
You can see he's making a conscious effort to keep the ball up and in on Bonilla. Bonilla likes the ball down and out over the plate from the left side. And you see there, he's trying to make sure he stays in tight, and he does.
Hit hard and speared by Martinez. Wow, what a play. After 7, 5-4 New York.
Infield defense is what separates the good team from the best defensive teams, and the Yankee infield has played excellent defense this entire series. Great hands by the middle infielders and good hands here by Tino Martinez. He's made a couple of fine plays. You see this ball starting to hook, and you see the umpire at first base calls it foul.
Boggs to the plate here in the 8th, breaks his bat, loops one into shallow center. Ripken goes out. Anderson comes in and calls him off for the catch. Let's go back to the bottom of the 7th and watch Bonilla's reaction. He scorches this ball. Now, it would have been foul. He isn't robbed of a hit, but he is robbed of his remaining swings. If Martinez doesn't spear that ball, then Bonilla's still up there with a chance to hack.
That's the way it seems to go when you're in the kind of a slump that Bonilla is. He can't buy a base hit. Finally hits one good, foul, and they catch that too.
Bernie Williams, he and Derek Jeter have now hit safely in all 8 Yankee playoff games. Williams homered in the first. Since then, he's grounded out twice. Jesse Orosco, a busy man this postseason, up in the Baltimore pen. Tino Martinez is the next hitter, a man Orosco has been effective against. if they planned to go to Orozco, they wouldn't go to him against Williams. There's Tino waiting next, because you just turned the switch hitter around to the right side, and he's been more devastating right-handed. It's basically pick your poison with the groove that Williams is in, but if there's any edge at all to the pitcher, it's when you turn him around to the left side.
Well, Coppinger found that out in the opening inning when he hung a slider on Williams and he jerked it out of here.
You know, looking at Orozco, Tino Martinez may be his designated batter that he faces the remainder of this series if he's brought in, because he's had such good success against him.
Well, if they do bring him in to face Martinez, even if he finishes the inning with him, you don't have to worry about pinch hitting in a DH league. Then in the Yankee ninth, you got one right-handed hitter, Fielder. Then you got Strawberry and O'Neill, a couple of left-handed hitters. That's assuming everybody is retired. That would be the sequence 8th to 9th. The 2-1 from Alan Mills coming to Bernie Williams. With the Orioles down to 6 outs, in the 8th, they're due to send up Ripken, Murray, and Surhoff. To wait on it, lifts it to right center field. The ball carrying tonight, and it bounces over the wall for a double. Williams speeding around second, but called back.
Well, that's another high breaking ball out over the plate. He threw a couple of fastballs that Williams couldn't get to, and then he throws a breaking ball out over the plate, and he can catch up with that, and he lines it in the right center field for an extra base hit. And they're lucky that the ball bounced over the wall. If it just hit off the wall, he would have had a triple. Here it is again. You see he just waits on it and hammers it up the gap in right center field.
I wonder a lot of times, Joe, about some of these new warning tracks they have in baseball that are cork or rubber or whatever they are. Instead of dirt, if those balls, a lot of those balls would really bounce over the fence. They take that high hop and get out of here for the ground rule double.
Exit Mills, enter Orozco to face Martinez. Alan Mills had hoped to hand it over to Jesse Orozco with 2 out and nobody aboard. It didn't quite happen that way. Bernie Williams touches him for a double. Now Orozco comes in with some trouble brewing. The Orioles have played 8 postseason games. Orozco has been in all of them now. Tino Martinez 0 for 3 on the night. And a ball.
Well, the first time he faced Orozco in game 1, he threw him some breaking balls like that one there, and Martinez chased him. The second time, he threw him fastballs. He laid off of the breaking ball, got a fastball, hit it pretty hard, but a good play by Alomar robbed him of a base hit. So now you see that he has seen him a couple of times, gives him a better chance of getting a base hit.
So a strikeout and a ground out for Martinez against Orozco in this series, as you saw on the graphic, 2 for 16 lifetime. And they just couldn't get Orozco warmed up in time to get him to face Martinez last night in the 8th. After Bernie Williams' single had tied the game against Messina, it would have been an ideal situation for Orozco. But Johnson had to leave Messina in. Orozco wasn't ready. On the 1-1 pitch, Martinez hit an opposite field double.
Well, last night, Hoyles didn't have any problems with his contact to give Orozco time to get ready in the bullpen.
So he hit the double, and it was on that play that the ball slipped out of Todd Zeal's hands. And so with a double and an error, Orozco adjusting the laces with a double and an error, Williams wound up scoring. The Yankees were in front 3-2. Then Johnson stayed with Messina against Fielder, understandably, because Fielder had never had any success against Messina and had 2 strikeouts and a weak dribbler of a ground out against him for the night. But Messina hung one and Fielder hit it out. And just like that, the game slipped from the Orioles' grasp.
And Orozco just showing the fastball that time to Martinez upstairs, out of the strike zone, out of the hitting zone. Let's see if he comes back with a breaking ball down low and away. And they play Martinez to hit the other way against Orozco. Outfield around towards the left side. Anderson and Surhoff.
2-1 pitch.
Well, he hung him a breaking ball
He sure
there,
did.
and Martinez did not catch up with it. Here's what Martinez sees, kind of slingshot sidearm breaking ball from Orozco. It's right out there where Martinez can handle it, but he fouls it.
I don't think Jesse Orozco liked the location of that ball, Joe. Just look at the expression on his face. That's the kind of a breaking ball a catcher wants to jump out and grab before it gets to the hitting zone.
Orozco trying to keep it a one-run game. Jesse Orozco's been around a long time. He's 39 years old. Now the other shoe comes untied. 10 years ago this month, he saved 3 games and won another for Davey Johnson's Mets in the LCS against the Astros, and then was on the mound when they closed out Game 7 of an unbelievable World Series against the Red Sox. I had it reversed. Not 3 saves and a win, the other way around. 3 wins and a save in the '86 LCS.
Doesn't matter to him.
They won all 4 games, the 4 games they needed. 3 wins and a save. Base hit. Williams being waved home by Randolph, and now he stops him. First he was waving him on, and now he stops him.
Same pitch that we talked about that he didn't hit before. It's a breaking ball that he hangs inside, and Bernie Williams at second base had to hold up and make sure that Palmeiro did not catch it. See, it hangs inside. He ripped it, and because it's a line drive, Bernie Williams could not take off right away from second base. He gets a late break, and Bonilla is able to hold him at third base. And watch, he can't break right away. Now he sees it go through, and he gets a late break, so no chance to score. Good base running there and good coaching there by Willie Randolph, although he's supposed to be in the coach's box. He's halfway down the line up towards home plate. Good job there by Tino.
So he finally solves Orozco. And they have to go to Armando Benitez to face Cecil Fielder when we come back. Armando Benitez is ready. Cecil Fielder to the plate. The infield plays back, hoping for the double play. 1 out, runners at first and third. The Yankees trying to add to a 5-4 lead.
The Orioles are playing the infield back, trying to get a double play. Their failure to complete a double play on Fielder in last night's ball game really hurt them.
Fielder is struck out and grounded out twice. There's a strike. Benitez came into game 1, walked Strawberry with the bases loaded in the 7th, gave up the disputed homer to Derek Jeter in the 8th. Then in game 2, though, he came in and got Fielder and Martinez to end the game. It's quickly 0-2.
And here's another guy that Fielder's going to have to turn it up a click or 2 against. Benitez with a great fastball. That's basically all you're going to look for against. If he throws you a nasty old breaking ball, I mean, you got to tip your cap to him. But his number 1 is a fastball. Just a sac fly here is big for New York.
And it's a chopper. It'll be very hard to turn 2 here. Their only play is at first. Just about the only kind of ball that Cecil Fielder can hit on the infield where you wouldn't have a chance to get a double play. It becomes an RBI ground out as Williams speeds across from third. And Martinez moves up to second. It's 6-4, and that's just huge with Rivera set to work the 8th and Wetland ready for the 9th.
Well, I want to give Cecil Fielder some credit here because see what he does right there. He just puts the ball
back.
in play.
You're right, Joe.
And I've seen him do that a lot of times in this series and in the Texas series. He just chokes down with 2 strikes
shortens his swing and tries to make sure he put the ball in play. He did the same thing last night, and they were not able to turn the double play on him. So
that's exactly
good
what he
job
did
there by Fielder.
That ball was almost by him. Fastball down low. Good as a sacrifice fly and almost as high. Now Strawberry is homered, singled, and struck out. One more look at it. No chance to turn two. Williams breaks on contact. The ball chopped over the mound. Zeal comes to get it. His only play is at first. And the 2-0 pitch is lifted wide of third and into the seats. Well, the way Davey Johnson had this planned out, Alan Mills was supposed to get Bernie Williams for the second out. Orozco was supposed to get Martinez to retire the side. Then he would have let Orozco face Fielder to start the ninth with the bases empty in anticipation of him facing the two left-handed hitters, Strawberry and O'Neill. But it didn't work out anything like that. And now it's 6-4 New York. 3-1.
And that run is big because it gives Rivera and maybe Wetland in the ninth some margin for error. As we saw, he had to just kind of walk Palmeiro. Now he doesn't have to walk anyone because he has a 2-run lead.
And maybe more. Deep left, way back. And just over the wall for the second homer of the night for Darryl Strawberry. Best laid plans.
Now here again is that last offering, a fastball down about the middle. Strawberry the other way, and B.J. Surhoff. Strawberry thinks he got enough. Surhoff back to the wall. And here at Camden Yards, you can get over the top of that thing easily. But it was backing out of here. And a big 2-run homer.
Just into the
Darryl Strawberry, yep.
Hit the first seat.
Well, that's the one thing about guys like Benitez and any hard thrower. I mean, if you make decent contact because of their velocity, it'll carry and go. And we talked earlier tonight about how much better the ball is carrying than in last night's game.
Well, you have to give Joe Torre a lot of credit. He made the right moves here in Baltimore, putting Darryl Strawberry in the outfield, making some changes in his lineup, and they have paid off.
8-4 New York. Almost insurmountable with 2 innings left and Rivera and Wetland set to work them.
Be interesting to see how Torre goes now in the 8th and the 9th.
Well, if you let Rivera work all 3 innings, since he came in the 7th, then maybe he's not available tomorrow.
Well, if he works 2, I don't think he's going to be available in the 7th inning tomorrow anyway, would he? And maybe if you do that, you can use Wetland for 2 tomorrow if you have to.
It's 6 of one and a half dozen of the other. You're right, though, Joe.
Yeah.
It bears it out.
Yeah.
I mean, if with the Orioles now down by 4, and Rivera really breezing, and the Yankees here in the 8th inning, you're right. Do you use him tonight for 3, or I say, you know, you got to go with what you've done in the past. I mean, if they come out of here now with a victory tomorrow to wrap things up, then it's going to be Rivera again tomorrow. I mean, why wouldn't he do it the same way he's done it all year long?
Well, Rivera threw 16 pitches in the 7th. When he threw 40 pitches in 2 innings of work in Game 1, Torre was emphatic in saying he would not use him in Game 2. Now, if he worked a very quick 8th inning, maybe he could give him an inning tomorrow if you needed him.
You know, there's another option here. You can get someone else up right now and let them work the 8th and let Wetland work the 9th. That's another option.
But do you get overconfident then with a 4-run lead against a team as powerful as Baltimore?
Well, you can bring Wetland in the 8th if you have to.
Soho gets a turn at bat.
There are a lot of options. we're giving Joe Torre a lot of options here.
We went over the whole roster.
Yeah, we're giving a whole lot of options here.
And if they don't end it here tomorrow, there's a day off Monday to nurse those arms before Game 6 in New York Tuesday. Believe me, this guy knows all of this better than any of us do.
You're right. And that's why he's got his paper and pen out. He's already planned what he's going to do the rest of the day. We're up here talking about what he's going to do.
Beats having a real job, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
0-2 to Soho. Toward the hole, Alomar makes that play all the time, pegs him out. But the Yankees throw 3 up on the board in the top of the 8th and break a close game open. Due to the lateness of the ball game, the political program paid for by Perot 96, which was originally scheduled to air following the game, will air on NBC at a future time. And Mr. Perot certainly hopes that's before November 5th. Strawberry has more than done his duty tonight. 2 homers and a single. And Tim Raines replaces him for defense in left field. Pat Dobson on the phone to the Baltimore bullpen. As Ripken leads it off against Rivera in the Oriole 8th. And a called strike. Cal 0 for 2 with a walk tonight.
You know, in going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, I thought Torre might go to somebody else in the 8th and save Rivera for tomorrow, if even need be tomorrow. But I thought he might go that way, if indeed he wants to use Wetland tonight too. But with a 4-run lead, go to somebody else and give these guys a couple of innings off and to be ready for tomorrow.
I think it's like Bob was saying, you don't want to get too confident. So maybe he's figuring out he may use Rivera for 3 tonight because he's going to have 2 days off, Sunday and Monday.
Into shallow right center with Williams sprinting in, and it falls in front of him. Ripken with a wide turn, but he'll hold it first in this situation, down by 4. In a 1-run game, it might have been worth a gamble, but not in this situation.
Well, Bernie Williams told us that he has to try to protect right center field because O'Neill doesn't run well and he's hurting, and that's where this ball is. And Bernie Williams tries to run it down, but he can't. As you see Ripken round first base, and he holds up with a single. But you see O'Neill not giving it much effort there because he can't run. But you see Bernie Williams trying to get there and cover in right center field. That ball is normally going to be caught or at least run after by the right fielder, but you could see there that Paul O'Neill cannot make up that difference.
O'Neill has had a home run tonight. Are you surprised he's still out there?
Yeah, I would have put Strawberry in right, I guess, and maybe put Raines in left.
Murray goes the opposite way for a hit. Now, again, you can't assume that any of this would have happened necessarily had it been a 1-run game. But from the Oriole perspective, it just makes you cringe when your bullpen can't keep it close. It was a 1-run game until the Yankees got 3 in the top half of this inning.
Well, there's a pitch upstairs on Murray, and he goes the other way. High fastball from Rivera, and Murray pokes it to left field. 2 on now.
Stottlemyre back to the phones. Wetland getting up. Surhoff to the plate. And this ball is hit into right. It will fall in front of O'Neill, who has no chance with the bum leg, and the bases are loaded on 3 consecutive singles, and that brings the tying run to the plate.
Well, that's all you can ask. Anytime you can get that tying run to the plate, and the Orioles have it going. John Wetland up and going to get ready in a hurry for New York. Here's that last offering by Rivera. All 3 of the pitches, all 3 of the base hits came on pitches that were upstairs. Look at this one on B.J. Surhoff. Upstairs at a line drive to right, and Mel Stottlemyre out there to try and find out what's going on with Mariano Rivera. Loaded up for Baltimore.
And Wetland getting ready with some urgency now. This is just before the last pitch. Jose Cardenal trying to get the outfield to come in, but the way he's facing, it looks like he's gesturing to Raines in left field. Rivera stays in to face Hoyles, who has 5 career grand slams. Including one earlier this year that, as I remember, it came with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. His team down by 3. I think it was against Seattle. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was. And they won the game something like 13-12 on a 2-out bottom of the 9th grand slam by Hoyles. If he could turn the trick here, this game would be tied.
If my memory serves me correct, you are correct.
That's a relief.
In fact, I remember the game. Good fastball.
Well, and Rivera looks like he's getting a little more serious now.
The first couple of pitches in the inning, maybe because he stood on the bench so long, it did not look like he was completely loose, but this is a good fastball on the inside part of the plate. You see Hoyles can't pull the trigger there.
And down he goes. So that's the first out.
Well, if he wasn't serious to start this inning, maybe the 4-run cushion too much for Rivera to work with. Here's that last fastball on Hoyles, and he threw it right by him. One more time. Right by him. Back-to-back fastballs and a big strikeout. Still in a big jam, though. Here's Brady Anderson.
50 homers for the year. 3 more in the postseason. Strike 1 is called.
And that first pitch is always important with the bases loaded because now he can't sit just on a fastball. This is a good fastball right on the inside corner for strike 1. Any pitching coach in the world will tell you the best pitch in the world is strike 1.
The 0-1 pitch with the bases loaded. Way high. Anderson's 1 career grand slam came last year against the Tigers. The largest crowd in Camden Yards history, 48,974, and all of them on their feet.
Mariano Rivera, 93 miles an hour. That last fastball.
One and 2. Anderson has walked. Fly to deep right. Been robbed of a hit on a good play by Duncan at second base and popped to short. Fouled off.
Joe Girardi didn't like the last offering from Rivera, the location anyway. He wanted that fastball off the outside corner. And Rivera made it too good. Anderson had a pretty good hack at it and fouled it back. I thought they might try to go upstairs on him. That pitch off or too much of the outside corner. Look where Girardi is sitting. A little bit high, and Anderson just got a piece to foul it. See if they try to go up and in on him here one time.
The only trouble, if you try to go in and you make a 6 or 8 inch mistake, you're going into his power. And I think that's what Girardi wanted to make sure of, that we do not give him a pitch inside that he can handle.
You're right. Struck him out with the high heat. So he fans Hoyles and then Anderson. 75 home runs between them with the bases loaded.
Here it is one more time. Away on the previous pitch and then an upstairs fastball on Anderson. Look at Girardi. He wanted it downstairs. Or he may have indicated when given the sign, give me it upstairs. And here it is about letter high, and Anderson can't catch up to it.
Good pitch.
Again, 93, 94 miles an hour. And if you throw him up there, there's not a lot of guys going to hit him. Not too many people can handle that.
3 straight singles followed by 2 straight strikeouts. And strike 1 to Zeile.
I'm telling you, he's humping, isn't he? Wow. To load the bases, come up with 2 big outs, and still in that 93, 94 mile an hour range. You talk about a kid who doesn't seem to be bothered by anything. This is a big jam for him, but he's not pitching like it.
1-1 to Zeile, who singled twice and grounded out twice.
Well, it's really not a jam for him.
That's what I'm saying.
Because he figures he's armed with the best thing possible, and that's a 94 mile an hour fastball.
And a high pop back of second base. Jeter wants it. Wow. The Orioles leave the bases loaded, and they had them loaded with nobody out. 8 for New York. Tonight's American League Championship Series is brought to you by Genuine Chevrolet, the cars more Americans trust. By AT&T, your true choice. By J.C. Penney, celebrating 94 years of serving you. And by Subway, what a sandwich. Well, the Orioles have left 10 men on base, including 3 in the 8th. With 3 hitters, all capable of going deep, having a crack at it as the tying run. 2 struck out, the other popped up. Terry Matthews comes on to work the top of the 9th. It's all about the bullpen, isn't it?
Well, the Yankees have shown that they could score on anybody late. They did the same thing yesterday to Messina. But you're right, the Yankee bullpen has done its job the entire playoff.
Joe, you
Texas and the Orioles.
I was going to say, Joe, you talked earlier about the great defensive play by the Yankees tonight. Big play by Jeter. Line drive caught by Tino Martinez. I mean, they've done it all. And when you get that kind of a performance out of the bullpen, after you load the bases and nobody out, you're sitting kind of pretty.
Girardi strikes out to start the 9th. But the Yankees already have what appears to be, I underline appears to be, a comfortable cushion. They have lost 1 game in which they led entering the 9th all year. And this time they'll have at least a 4-run lead.
That 1 game was to the Boston Red Sox in the last series there at Yankee Stadium.
Jeter 1 for 4, had a first-inning double. Scored ahead of Strawberry, who homered 2 batters later. The rookie from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Grew up, he says, a Yankee fan, not a Tiger fan.
Well, it's always a thrill just to play in the major leagues and put on that major league uniform, but to be able to play for your favorite team, that's unbelievable.
Your favorite team growing up was?
San Francisco Giants.
Because you grew up in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area. And I did get to play 2 years with them.
What a player this guy is. And
You're
should
right.
be just hitting his prime at age 28. Bernie Williams. Jump-started the Yankees with a 2-run homer in the first.
But I think if you look back over this game, Bob, the Yankees have a lot of heroes tonight. Weathers, Graham Lloyd, and of course Rivera, Strawberry, and the entire infield. They played very good defense.
Well, Terry Matthews making quick work of the Yankees here in the ninth. Still up there into the ninth. And well past 11 o'clock is the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes. Our thanks to Captain Daniels and the crew for the many spectacular shots highlighting tonight's telecast. 2 up, 2 down on strikes. Here's Boggs. He goes the other way, but Surhoff is there to take it. And Wade goes 0 for 5 for the night. The Yankees take an 8-4 lead to the bottom of the ninth. 2 innings for Mariano Rivera closes the book. 34 pitches, correct, Joe?
34 pitches.
Wetland is in, but let's look at a couple of the biggest among those 34 pitches. After the Orioles loaded the bases on 3 straight singles to open the 8th, he fans Hoyles, he fans Anderson with some major heat.
I mean, he started the inning, he didn't like he was throwing that hard, and all of a sudden when the bases got loaded, he just reached back, got a little bit more on that fastball, and closed out the inning. Now it's up to John Wetland to close out the ball game for the Yankees.
And every once in a while, Joe, when you get in somebody's bullpen, you think to yourself, well, you're going to get a break. You know, you face some guy who's throwing 93, 94 miles an hour. It doesn't work that way with the Yankees. They bring this guy in, you're right in the same area.
I see Wetland hasn't gotten a new hat since last night. Still got that gamey item on. This is officially not a save situation. Comes in with a lead of more than 3 runs.
Talking a minute ago about Rivera at 93, 94. This guy's in the 90s again, 91, 92.
Because the starter, Kenny Rogers, didn't go 5, it's up to the official scorer to decide who the winning pitcher is. And Mark Jacobson, tonight's official score, tells us, as expected, it will be David Weathers.
Yeah, why not? Heck
Who
yeah.
took over for Rogers. One and 2 to Robbie Alomar, who's 2 for 4. He has a single and a double. It looks like it's going to be up to Scott Erickson to stave off elimination tomorrow for the Orioles. And Andy Pettitte will try to close it out for the Yankees.
Bob, I said before the ball game, this is the most pivotal game in a 7-game series simply because the Yankees, if they win tonight, they're up 3-1. And it doesn't matter what he does tomorrow because they go home with a 3-1 lead with 2 games in Yankee Stadium. So this is the pivotal game tonight in this entire series.
There's been a lot of talk about whether the wild card team, assuming you even approve of the wild card concept, and to me, once you have a wild card, the wild card becomes more important than the race for first place. The only race that really matters is the wild card. You take all the drama and the integrity out of the pennant race, but if they're going to have a wild card concept at all, they got to change the home field advantage situation and make it a distinct difference between finishing in first and being the wild card. But that having been said, it doesn't seem to matter to the Yankees if they play the Orioles at Camden Yards. They're on the verge of their 8th consecutive win without a defeat here. But I feel that they're going to have to do this. If they want to make it fair, they ought to cut the season back to 154 games like it used to be and make all 3 rounds best of 7 because there's more of a chance of a fluke upset. Alomar pokes it toward Boggs, who goes to his knees to make the catch for the first out. There's more of a chance of a fluke upset in the first round.
I agree with you.
So if you take it to 7, there's less of a chance that the lesser team can win it. And then I would say play the first 2 games on the home field of the team with the best record in the league. Even if it's in the same division as the wild card team, make the wild card team play the team that has the best record in the whole league, play the first 2 games on the home field of that team, the next 2 at the wild card, and the next 3, if necessary, back at the top team. Then you'd have a 5-2, you'd have a distinct difference and a reason to play for first place and not just the wild card. And you wouldn't have one of those situations like San Diego and the Dodgers, where what should have been the ultimate game as the payoff at the end of a pennant race became almost meaningless.
Well, the only thing I won't agree with you on is that I like the wild card. That's all I'm going to say.
I just got back. What were you guys talking about?
Drops the breaking ball into Palmeiro, and it's 0-2.
But I did understand what you were saying. And I agree, but I do like the wild card.
Got to make a distinction, though, between the wild card and the first place team. Not enough of a distinction exists now. And down goes Palmeiro. Football tomorrow, pregame at noon Eastern time. Greg Gumbel and the guys. Followed by this slate of games. Most of the country gets Miami and Buffalo. Always one of the best matchups in the AFC East. Then we're here around 4 o'clock Eastern time for Game 5.
All I want to know is what time we leave in the hotel.
Whenever you feel as if you're ready.
Thanks, pal.
I tell you what, if I was the Yankees right now, I would hope that Bobby Bonilla would get a base hit. Because you know he's going to be due eventually, so hopefully he would get one here and get out of your way.
This thing is not over by any means. I mean, it's a big day tomorrow for the Orioles, and they're definitely still in this thing, but, you know, down 3-1. Still playing at home, and with Erickson going tomorrow.
Everything really shifted because coming home with a split in New York, they had control of the series until they lost yesterday, and then the fact that they did have to start a rookie. 2-2. Having to start a rookie in this very pivotal game, although the rookie pitched well. I mean, he kept them in the ball game, which is all they could ask for. So
he was down 5-4, only gave up 6 hits, Joe.
Right.
Full count. Whistles one into the Oriole dugout. Looks like one of the security guards made the play.
We'll talk to John Wetland about that hat tomorrow.
I got a feeling that
I wonder if it comes off.
By itself, I think it just walks away. And a high pop-up that's going to leave Bonilla 0 for 5, hitless for the series, and the Orioles in a 3-1 hole. There's the Chevrolet MVP, no doubt about it, the player of the game. Darryl Strawberry, 3 for 4, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 3 runs scored. The Yankees win it. It's the first time in the entire postseason that they didn't have to come from behind to win. They jumped in front early, and although the Orioles rallied to get back within 1, the Yankees never relinquished the lead, and they win it 8-4 to take a commanding 3-1 lead in the series, and they still have not lost this year at Camden Yards. The winning pitcher is David Weathers. The losing pitcher is Rocky Coppinger. There is no save awarded. Wetland had a 4-run lead when he came in. That hat is going to stay if they make it to the World Series all the way through. He won't change it till next year. You can be assured of that. Darryl Strawberry's with Jim Gray. Jim?
All right, thank you very much, Bob. Darryl, there's got to be a tremendous amount of satisfaction and redemption that you're feeling. You started the year in St. Paul, went to Columbus, and now the Yankees. How about the redemption factor?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to give the honor and praise to God. It's been a true blessing for me. He's turned my life around, and, you know, everything's just worked out real well. And you know, tonight was a big night for me. I was thinking about my brother Ronnie, and I just wanted to hit two home runs for him tonight. So I went out and done a good job, and I'm just happy about it.
How satisfying is this for you? You didn't play in the first 2 games. You weren't the designated hitter. Then you came into the field. Talk about the satisfaction and Joe Torre's hunch of putting you in.
Well, I mean, I do just about whatever's asked out of me. You know, I don't cause any confusion, and just stay ready. I think that's the most important thing, is to be ready. We're all professionals, and you just have to be ready to go out and do your job.
Darryl, congratulations.
All right, thank you very much.
Let's go back upstairs to Bob Costas.
Well, tomorrow it's Andy Pettitte against Scott Erickson, with the Yankees 1 win away from their first trip to the World Series since 1981, and Joe Torre's first trip to the World Series ever. Tomorrow, the NFL, beginning at noon on NBC. As we mentioned, the Dolphins and the Bills is the game most of the country will see. We're here at 4 o'clock Eastern Time with Game 5 of this series. And don't forget, after your late local news, it's an encore presentation of Saturday Night Live starring Elle Macpherson with musical guest Sting. Our thanks to David Neal, Andy Rosenberg, and everybody in the truck. For Bob Uecker and Joe Morgan, Elliot Kalb, and Jeff Sleed upstairs who helped us out, I'm Bob Costas. Good night.